Chapter 1178. Even if you beat Gu Xianyuan to death, Gu Xianyuan would never have thought that the black-robed man in front of her would actually look exactly the same as Longshi Jiandi. Although the current plastic surgery technology was very advanced, as long as the face shape was suitable, it could be done to look exactly like anyone. But she believed that no one in the city of London would have the guts to dare to make himself look like Longshi Jiandi. Such a crime was enough for Longshi Jiandi to kill him. Moreover, the moment the other party's black robe was thrown away, a strong sword essence and sword qi, which almost suffocated Gu Xianyuan, directly sent the fruit knife in Gu Xuanyuan's hand flying. Even Gu Xianyuan herself was directly pressed by this imposing aura and retreated dozens of steps. She barely did not fall to the ground by relying on the wall for support. Lu Shihua, on the other hand, was directly knocked out by the strong sword qi and directly fell in the bathroom. He did not have to bear the pressure from an Emperor Sword-level swordsman like Gu Xianyuan. "Your Majesty Longshi Jiandi, is it really you?" Gu Xianyuan said in disbelief. If one's appearance could be changed, then this majestic and terrifying sword essence and sword qi absolutely could not be compared. The person in front of her was the real Longshi Jiandi. "You look familiar. I seem to have seen you somewhere." At this time, Longshi Jiandi also noticed that something was wrong with the situation. The Luing in front of him was unexpectedly familiar. He always felt that he had seen her somewhere, but for a while, Longshi Jiandi could not recall it. Just as Longshi Jiandi was about to search for information through his personal terminal took the initiative to ring. This was a notification from a communication device. "What's wrong?" Longshi Jiandi answered the communication device. After listening to the report from the other end of the communication device, he suddenly frowned. After a while, he said, "Okay, I will come back. You wait for me in the palace." "Sorry, today we can't play a fun little game, but two beauties don't go. Today's room fee has already been paid by Zhen. Zhen will come to play with you tomorrow." Longshi Jiandi left such a sentence and directly floated away. Without the oppression of Longshi Jiandi's sword qi, Lu Shihua also slowly woke up from his coma and ran to Gu Xuanyuan's side in an incomparably terrified manner, before sticking his body to Gu Xuanyuan's body and asked in a trembling voice, "Elder sister, what the hell is going on? Why did I seem to have seen His Majesty Longshi Jiandi just now?" "It's all because you chose a good place. The two of us got on the wrong boat." Gu Xianyuan smiled bitterly, then directly sent a set of information to Lu Shihua's personal terminal. Lu Shihua quickly scanned through the information, then her entire body was filled with shame. She had never imagined that she would actually choose such a terrifying end. This information was very fragmented. It should be information that Gu Xianyuan pulled from various posts on the forum. When these information were put together, it formed the true face of this hotel called Sharing Economy. It turned out that this hotel was the same as the other hotels in the Red Light Street, all of which were in the flesh business. However, the way of doing business of Sharing Economy was completely different from those of other hotels. From its name, it could be heard that it was doing the sharing flesh business at home. It was a platform rather than a seller. Simply speaking, Sharing Economy Hotel was equivalent to Taobao. Any woman could open a room in the hotel for free. At this time, the woman would become a seller on this platform. The hotel would then post the seller's photo on its own service desk, and the man who came to the hotel would become the buyer. They could browse these photos at the service desk, and once they saw a woman they were satisfied with, they could pay the room fee and then directly enter the room to start the transaction. Sharing Economy Hotel. As for the amount of the transaction, it was up to the buyer and the seller to negotiate between themselves. This was the real meaning of the words of the two attendants at the service desk just now. After understanding this business idea, Gu Xianyuan had to admit that this was indeed a very popular and novel model. There was no fixed female technician in this hotel. Any woman could guest act as a female technician if they were interested, and then earn a quite generous amount of money at the same time. For men, this was also a paradise. Every time they came here, they could almost meet fresh and different women of various occupations. There were female students, female teachers, female staff, female nurses, and sometimes they could even meet some female swordsmen to experience life. An ordinary man could actually have papa with a noble female swordsman. This was a good thing that many men could not encounter in their lifetime. This was an experience that made men's blood boil just by listening to it. This was the legendary sharing one-night stand. Any discerning investor could see that this model had great potential and consumption impetus. If it was used for financing, it was unknown how many people would wave their banknotes in their hands to become angel investors of this investment project. It was just like the wave of sharing economy before the Great Destruction. Unfortunately, this was prohibited by the law. Although the law had legalized the red light industry, all female technicians must have a certificate. 99% of these female technicians who came to work temporarily were women without any qualifications. It was obviously illegal for such women to participate in this sharing economy. This was also the reason why, although this sharing economy hotel had such a profitable model, it could only be carried out in secret and only accepted those members who were introduced by acquaintances to join. If such a thing were to become a big deal, they would be locked up and put in jail. I didn't expect His Majesty Jiandi to be such a person. He is an emperor sword-level swordsman, Lu Shihua said in disbelief after reading the information. What's so strange about this? Didn't the emperors of the Middle Ages often go to the brothel to look for prostitutes to play with? Gu Xinyuan smiled. I heard that Longshu Jindi is a very lascivious guy. How could he let go of such an interesting sharing economy? Maybe he is one of the backstage supporters of this hotel. So this hotel can survive in the red light district and not be squeezed out by those big stores who spend money to buy a license. After all, compared with those big stores, this sharing economy hotel is almost equivalent to running at zero cost. Sister, should we leave here and change to another hotel? Lu Shihua asked nervously. No need. Gu Xinyuan shook her head and said with a smile, since Longshu Jindi has been here, do you think this hotel will dare to let other men into this room? Well, go to bed early. We are going to meet His Majesty Longshu Jindi tomorrow. Why did Longshu Jindi suddenly go back? Did he recognize the two of us? Lu Shihua asked worriedly. I don't know. Gu Xinyuan shook her head. I don't know if he recognized us or not, but he certainly didn't leave for this reason. I guess the night captain arrived at the palace but couldn't find Longshu Jindi, so he hurriedly called Longshu Jindi. Did he recognize us or not? Lu Shihua asked unwaveringly. Even if he didn't recognize us last night, we still have to meet tomorrow. Your question doesn't make any sense. Gu Xinyuan knocked on Lu Shihua's head. Go to sleep. Don't think too much. Hearing Gu Xuanyuan's words, Lu Shihua's face looked as if he had constipation. After such a chance encounter, God knows how embarrassing tomorrow's meeting would be. But as the sword pavilion master of Yuzhong City, Lu Shihua couldn't escape this encounter at all. Thinking of this, Lu Shihua was very confused, and in the end, he fell asleep in a daze. Listening to Lu Shihua's even snoring, Gu Xinyuan couldn't sleep at all. Just now was the first time she had confronted a real emperor sword-level sword wielder in reality. Although she had met Longshu Jindi in the trial formation of Chanyang Mountain and in Yinjing City. But in the trial formation, the two sides were separated by the void, and in Yinjing City, Longshu Jindi had completely restrained his sword element and sword chi. Only this time, Longshu Jindi's sword element and sword chi were fully released, allowing Gu Xinyuan to truly feel the fighting power of an emperor sword-level sword wielder. Gu Xinyuan helplessly found that even if her swordsmanship was brilliant, in front of an emperor sword-level sword wielder, she was suppressed into a complete mess. If the two sides were to fight, she would definitely lose in the hands of the opponent, without any accident. This feeling was completely different from facing Yuan Ko. It must be said that Gu Xinyuan had also fought with Kong Na, the flood-level Yuan Ko. Although at that time, Kong Na's strength had been greatly reduced because of hunger, Gu Xinyuan could say with certainty that even if the opponent had recovered his full strength, she still had a certain chance of defeating the opponent, although the chance was very small. And this time, facing Longshi Jiandi, Gu Xianyuan had no chance of winning. If I can become a real spirit sword level sword wielder, then maybe I still have a chance of winning. Gu Xianyuan looked at the Zhu Xian sword in her hand and muttered. Just as Gu Xianyuan had said, after dawn the next day, no man dared to disturb the sleep of Gu Xianyuan and Lu Shihua. This was a woman who had been slept with by His Majesty Jiandi, and no one had the courage to touch such a woman. The next day, when Lu Shihua and Gu Xianyuan freshened up and prepared to go to the service desk to check out, the two waitresses looked at Gu Xianyuan and Lu Shihua with envy. One of them also quietly asked Lu Shihua how it felt to have the twin phoenixes and dragon serve His Majesty. Lu Shihua was so angry that he almost took out the double-winged angel sword and cut off the woman's tongue. As a result, when Lu Shihua and Gu Xianyuan left the hotel, they found a pure gold limousine with a length of more than 10 meters parked at the door of the hotel. It seems that Longshi Jiandi has recognized the two of us, Gu Xianyuan said with a smile. Chapter 1179. Sitting in the royal hover car that Longshi Jiandi had sent, Gu Xianyuan appeared very relaxed. However, Lu Shihua was unable to remain calm. She swayed left and right in the car for a while, feeling very uncomfortable. The royal hover car was unimpeded along the way. There were no intersections that dared to light up the red light in front of the royal hover car. In less than 20 minutes, the royal hover car had arrived at the palace, which was the core area of London. Every base city had its own palace, and Yuzhong City was no exception. However, when there was no emperor sword wielder in this base city, the palace was permanently sealed. Only the cleaning robots were in charge of cleaning the palace. No one else was allowed to enter the palace, not even the chairman of the sword committee. However, the palace did not exist in the real world. Instead, it was located in a dimensional gap. Back then, Kenzu had led the surviving humans to hide in a dimensional gap. That was how Yinjing City came to be. The Radiant City was also hidden in a dimensional gap. The same was true for the palaces of the various base cities. However, unlike those naturally formed dimensional gaps, the dimensional gaps in the base cities were not formed naturally. Instead, they were subsidiary products of the superdimensional protection system. To this day, humans had not figured out the principle behind it. They only knew that when a superdimensional protection system was built and activated, a small dimensional gap would form. This dimensional gap was very small, about 10 square kilometers. It was unrealistic to build a large human shelter inside it. Moreover, once the superdimensional protection system was destroyed, the dimensional gap would disappear. When the dimensional gap was activated again, the entire space would be reset. All the products that had previously existed inside would disappear. Therefore, it was very dangerous for humans to hide inside. If someone destroyed the superdimensional protection system, the humans hiding inside the dimensional gap would definitely die. However, it would be a pity not to use this dimensional gap. Later, the fourth human, High Sage Jiandi, decided to use this dimensional gap as his palace. He built a huge palace in the dimensional gap and made it his personal residence. Anyway, as long as Jiandi was still in the base city, there was almost no possibility of the base city being attacked. There was also no danger of the superdimensional protection system being destroyed. This way, this dimensional gap was relatively safe. Moreover, it did not occupy the scarce land in the core area. With High Sage Jiandi as a demonstration, the later generations of Jiandi imitated him and used this dimensional gap as their new palace. In the beginning, due to the lack of human productivity, Jiandi usually chose to inherit the previous Jinni's palace. They would only build a new palace if the superdimensional protection system had been reset. Later on, with the development of black technology and the continuous increase in productivity, building a brand new palace didn't require that many resources. Therefore, even if the previous palace wasn't destroyed, the Sword Arch would forcefully reset the superdimensional protection system and reset the dimensional rift inside, turning it into a brand new piece of land and building a new palace that belonged to him. The entrance to the palace was directly above the core control room of the super-dimensional protection system. Later generations had to build a gate here and combine it with the entrance of the dimensional gap, forming the unique characteristics of this city. For example, the gate of the palace in Yanjing City was completely modeled after the Tiananmen Gate of the old Yanjing City. The gate of the palace in Yuzhong City was modeled after the King Tang Pavilion before the Great Destruction. The gate of the palace in London City was a copy of the former Arc de Triomphe. It was said that the Arc de Triomphe was a unique building in ancient Paris. However, London City was equivalent to the gathering of more than half of the survivors of Europe. They came from various countries in Europe. London City was essentially not the London of the Londoners before the Great Destruction, but European London. It was not strange to have the Arc de Triomphe of ancient Paris. Although the Arc de Triomphe was an important gateway to the palace, there were no other guards at the entrance other than a few staff members who checked personal terminals. After a simple check and confirmation of Gu Xinyuan and Lu Shihua's personal terminals, the Arc de Triomphe suddenly opened and welcomed Gu Xinyuan and Lu Shihua in. Just like what was mentioned before, the palace was built according to the personal preferences of the Jindi, and each had their own different styles. Longsher Jindi probably liked the medieval European castle style very much. Therefore, when Gu Xinyuan and Lu Shihua entered the Arc de Triomphe, they saw a magnificent European castle that covered an area of about 7 to 8 square kilometers. There was even a winding river flowing through the castle, giving people a feeling of returning to the Middle Ages. This palace castle did not have a gate, nor was there any guard. The royal hovercar carrying Gu Xinyuan and Lu Shihua directly drove into the castle. Just like the gate, there were no guards in the castle, only some beautiful women wearing bikinis busily shuttling back and forth. Big sister, why is there not a single guard in this palace? Lu Shihua felt very strange and asked Gu Xinyuan curiously, "What do you need guards for?" Gu Xinyuan rolled her eyes at Lu Shihua. "The most powerful human in the world lives here. What kind of guards do you think can protect such a human?" Lu Shihua suddenly became speechless. The royal hovercar stopped, and a gentleman in a tuxedo took the initiative to open the door and said in a gentle tone, "Welcome, beautiful Miss Lu Shihua and Miss Gu Shirhan. We meet again." You? Seeing the gentleman who opened the door for him, although he was already prepared in his heart, Lu Shihua was scared like a frightened rabbit. This gentleman was none other than the black-robed man who tried to overwhelm him last night. "Let's go inside and talk," Longsher Jindi said with a smile. "This is not the place to talk." Lu Shihua nodded, and under the leadership of Longsher Jindi, they walked through the castle for a full 10 minutes, until Lu Shihua felt a little dizzy. Finally, they arrived at a huge reception room. Longsher Jindi unceremoniously sat on the most luxurious seat, while Lu Shihua sat on both sides of the seat. Immediately, beautiful women in bikinis came in with all kinds of delicacies, filling the entire tea table, and then left in an orderly manner. Only Longsher Jindi, Gu Xinyuan, and Lu Shihua were left in the entire reception room. "Please allow me to apologize for yesterday's matter." Longsher Jindi raised the wine glass in his hand, nodded to Lu Shihua, and said, "I also did not expect that I would happen to meet the two of you there yesterday. I really offended you." "It's all right." Seeing Longsher Jindi's attitude was so friendly, Lu Shihua immediately threw away yesterday's dissatisfaction and said, "It's also our fault for inexplicably living in that kind of place. Hee. This matter has been clearly investigated. It's all that Macbeth's fault. This guy actually muddle-headedly left you in the common area and didn't know that you were going to stay in the core area. That's why such a ridiculous thing happened. I decided to deduct his hero coins for this month and divide them equally among the two ladies as compensation for last night's offense. This Longsher Jindi really knows how to conduct himself." Hearing Longsher Jindi's words, Gu Xinyuan sneered in her heart. Obviously, it was her who went to the brothel, but poor Macbeth's hero coins were deducted. Who should Macbeth find a reason with? Well, let's not talk about last night's matter. Let's get down to business. Longsure Jindy took a sip of the wine in his glass and said with a smile, I don't know, Miss Lu Shihua. Oh no, it's more appropriate to call you Pavilion Master Lu Shihua at this time. I don't know, Pavilion Master Lu Shihua. How are you going to express your apology to Yuzhong City? And how are you going to apologize on behalf of your previous Sword Pavilion Master, your master? Finally entering the official topic, Lu Shihua took a deep breath. On the way to London, Lu Shihua had already figured out how to deal with this topic. Now, she just needed to summon up the courage to say what she wanted to say. Longsure Jindy, your majesty, I'm afraid you've made a mistake. Lu Shihua said in a deep voice, I'm not here to apologize on behalf of Yuzhong City, let alone on behalf of my master. Oh, Longsure Jindy raised his eyebrows and asked somewhat rudely, I remember that the notice that Yuzhong City sent to me clearly stated that you came to apologize to me. Why don't you admit it now? That was issued by Yuzhong City's disciple, Shi Jin, who stole the authority of Sword Immortal Ling Su. Now that this shameless disciple is dead, all the notices he issued are invalid. Your Majesty, you can confirm this with Sword Immortal Ling Su, Lu Shihua said seriously. Huh. Longsure Jindy smiled. It's really interesting. Shi Jun has just sacrificed himself for Yuzhong City, and his body hasn't even stiffened yet. Yet Yuzhong City says such a thing. Isn't this too ridiculous and a little too heartless? Oh, by the way, I almost forgot that His Excellency Shi Jun died at the hands of your master's elder sister, Gu Xianyuan, and that elder sister Gu Xianyuan looks exactly like Miss Gu Shirhan. Isn't this too much of a coincidence? Your Majesty, you've gone off topic. My elder sister and younger brother have nothing to do with this matter. Gu Xianyuan said, lightly behind Lu Shihua. All right. Longsure Jindy spread out his hands. Then I'll ask Pavilion Master Lu Shihua to explain to me why you two have come to see me. Chapter 1180. I have two purposes for this trip. Lu Shihua took another deep breath. First, Your Majesty Jindy, I hope that you can explain to Yuzhong City why you still haven't come to our rescue, even though we have sent you a flood-level Yuan Ko's request for help. For Your Majesty, it only takes one day to travel from London to Yuzhong City. Your Majesty, your behavior has violated the base city special disaster joint defense general principles of the Sword Committee. Second, I hope to see the sword spirit of the Gue Palace and protest with him about the issue of Mr. Gahan, the former master of Yuzhong City. I want him to withdraw the unreasonable accusation against Mr. Gahan and apply for the Sword Committee to lift the arrest order against Mr. Gahan. After Lu Shihua finished his two requests, Longsure Jindy looked surprised. He didn't expect that Lu Shihua would come all the way to his territory and make these two requests. What did he mean? Was he provoking him? That's not interesting. The Dragon Lion Sword Emperor threw the wine cup in his hand onto the table, and the wine instantly spilled onto the table. The wine flowed along the table and quickly flowed to the edge of the table before finally dripping onto Lu Shihua's thigh. However, Lu Shihua's thigh didn't dodge, as if he didn't feel the wine at all. I don't need to answer your questions. Longsure Jindy said disdainfully. I have already sent a document to the Sword Committee for the reason that I can't take action. Master Lu Shihua, you can go to the Sword Committee to read the document. As for the matter of the sword spirit of the Gue Palace, it's my son's business. It has nothing to do with me. You can go and negotiate with the sword spirit of the Gue Palace yourself. If that's the case, I'll go look for some information and communicate with the sword spirit of the Gue Palace. Lu Shihua seemed to have predicted that the Dragon Lion Sword Monarch would say this, so he replied straightforwardly. Longsure Jindy's eyes instantly narrowed into slits. Longsure Jindy suddenly felt that he was unable to see through these two women. What were these two women thinking? They came all the way to London just to provoke him. Provoking him was one thing, but just as the provocation started, these two women took it back, as if such behavior was just to disgust him. This made it difficult for Longsure Jindi to understand the thoughts of these two women. What exactly did they want to do? Fine, let's just wait and see. I don't believe that these two women can stir up any waves. Longsure Jindi showed a faint smile and then said, "In that case, let's call it a day. Do you have a place to stay? Do you want to send you back to the shared economy hotel?" "There's no need for that." Lu Shihua stood up and looked around the luxurious hall. "Is there not even a guest room in His Majesty's palace?" "Of course there is." Longsure Jindi nodded. "But I only welcome my friends here, not some people I hate." "So, does His Majesty Longsure Jindi hate us?" Lu Shihua immediately asked. "Of course. I don't welcome you here. Please leave," Longsure Jindi said unceremoniously. "So that's how it is." Gu Xinyuan finally heard the word she wanted. Gu Xinyuan slowly stood up from the chair, then took off the white gloves on her hands and threw them directly in front of Longsure Jindi. "Mr. Han, what do you mean by this?" Looking at the white gloves that fell in front of him, Longsure Jindi suddenly felt that things had become extremely absurd. "I heard that this is the ancient etiquette of England. If I feel insulted, I can issue a duel to the person who insulted me and ask him to wash away the insult," Gu Xinyuan said with a sad and indignant face. "Wait a minute, isn't this inexplicable turn of events a bit too fast?" Longsure Jindi touched his head with a headache. This was the first time he had such a headache and incomprehensibility since he became an Emperor Sword-level swordsman. "What the hell happened just now? What the hell do you two mean?" Longsure Jindi glanced at the white gloves on his feet. "You'd better make it clear to me. Otherwise, don't think that I will fall into your trap so easily." "That's what I mean." Gu Shihan also glanced at the white gloves. "Your Majesty doesn't want me to stay here, which is the greatest insult to me. I will use this palace as a bet. If I win the duel, then your Majesty's palace will belong to me. If your Majesty loses, then I will stay here to serve your Majesty for life." "What the hell is this?" Longsure Jindi was completely dumbfounded. In just a few hours, a whirlwind of news spread throughout the city of London. Two women from Yuzhong City had actually dared to request a duel with their Longsure Jindi, asking for a duel of honor at the stake of their lives and the Palace of London. This news instantly ignited the whole city of London. The first reaction of all the people of London was that these two women were crazy, absolutely 100% crazy, because only a madman would request a duel with Jindi. However, new news soon spread. One of these two women was the Sword Pavilion Master of Yuzhong City, an ancient sword-level swordsman. The other was Gu Shihan, the twin sister of Gu Xinyuan, who was known as the goddess of Xinyuan. It was this Gu Shihan who had requested a duel with Longsure Jindi, asking for a duel that concerned life and honor. In the end, Longsure Jindi agreed to the request of these two crazy women. 5 days later, the duel would take place outside London. Because the arena in London could not withstand the power of an Emperor Sword-level swordsman, the duel could only be held outside London. When Longsure Jindi's official website confirmed and announced the news, the people of London really believed that it was true. As a result, a storm swept through London in an instant and quickly spread to other cities on the internet. By the afternoon of the same day, almost all the people in the world knew the news, and the whole world was in an uproar. At this time, the basic information about Lu Shihua and Gu Shihan was also published on the internet. Lu Shihua was a well-known ancient sword-level swordsman. In the case of the four-winged angel sword being stolen, she had cut off the possibility of promotion. She could only be an ancient sword-level swordsman. Of course, she could not challenge Longsure Jindi. Even if she did, Longsure Jindi would never accept the challenge of an ancient sword-level swordsman. This was too shameful. Then the only one who could challenge Longsure Jindi was Gu Shihan. According to the information, this Gu Shihan, like her brother and sister, was a spirit sword-level swordsman. But this was a bit too ridiculous. A spirit sword-level swordsman had issued a duel request to an Emperor sword-level swordsman. In any case, there was no chance of winning. What was even more unimaginable was that Longsure Jindi had actually accepted the entire duel request. Was Longsure Jindi crazy? Even a fool would know that this duel was a wrong decision for the Dragon Lion Sword Emperor no matter what. If Long Shi Jinyi won, it would be a matter of course. It would be expected, and there would be no surprise. But if Long Shi Jinyi lost, it would be a big problem. The human power system would completely collapse. Of course, no one believed that Long Shi Jinyi would lose this duel. This was simply impossible. And it must be noted that this was the first time in history that a spirit sword-level swordsman had issued a duel to an emperor sword-level swordsman. This could be said to be the first time in history. This first time instantly blew up all the internet. All humans knew about this challenge in the first place. Even those swordsmen in the wild had received this news. Even Yuan Ko had learned about this news through various means. Because of Liu Shihua's special identity, this duel quickly evolved into a duel between Yuzhong City and London City on the internet. It was called a revenge battle between Yuzhong City and London City. The netizens between the two cities instantly quarreled on the internet. The netizens of Yuzhong City were very optimistic. Anyway, the result was 99% certain that Gu Shirhan would lose. However, Gu Shirhan's loss would not have any impact on the reputation of Yuzhong City. Instead, it could disgust London City. At this time, the people of Yuzhong City were already very dissatisfied with London City. Yuzhong City had suffered 2 major attacks in 3 years, but Long Shi Jinyi did not appear in each major attack, allowing the people of Yuzhong City to resist desperately. If Yuzhong City had not been protected by the siblings Gahan and Gu Xinyuan twice, Yuzhong City would have been destroyed long ago. Therefore, the people of Yuzhong City were full of resentment towards London City. They only felt that London City was ungrateful. When Gu Jinyi was still there, they had rescued London City twice, but Long Shi Jinyi had no intention of repaying their kindness. This time, they could disgust London City. The people of London City were completely furious. Soon, someone posted Gu Shirhan's temporary residence on the internet. Countless protesters poured into the hotel where Gu Shirhan lived, asking her to come out and meet them. Of course, these people of London did not ask Gu Shirhan to give up the duel. Otherwise, wouldn't it seem that they were afraid of Gu Shirhan and that Long Shi Jinyi would be defeated by Gu Shirhan? They asked Gu Shirhan to come out of the hotel and go to the arena to duel with the other sword bearers of London City. The logic of the people of London City was very simple. If Gu Shirhan could not beat the other sword bearers of London City, then she was not qualified to challenge Long Shi Jinyi. In this way, Long Shi Jinyi could refuse the duel with dignity, so as not to lose his face. This group of people stayed at the gate of Gu Shirhan until midnight. Gu Shirhan threw a note from the window. The content of the note was very simple. She, Gu Shirhan, would set up an arena outside London City tomorrow and challenge all the people of London. She would sweep the whole city. Chapter 1181. Just as Gu Xinyuan had promised, early the next morning, the citizens of London discovered that a platform made of dimensional alloy had appeared in the sea not far from London. This platform was square and about 500 meters long. It was surrounded by seawater, and the closest point was about 500 meters away from the shore. In the middle of the platform was a flag with the words, "Invincible in London." Such a provocative flag immediately made all the people in London extremely unhappy. The sword bearers who stayed in London all rubbed their palms together, ready to teach this arrogant woman a good lesson and make her understand the principles of being a person. The local news media in London naturally would not let go of such explosive news. All kinds of cameras and cannons had long been set up on the shore, aimed at the platform on the sea. Something worth pondering was, such a large platform was obviously not something that Gu Xinyuan could build alone in one night. There must have been the help of the local forces in London to build such a platform. These news media also discovered this. Before Gu Xinyuan appeared on the platform, various news media began to debate and speculate about this point, discussing who helped Gu Xinyuan build such a huge platform. Soon, the answer to this mystery was found. Some sharp-eyed people noticed that the platform had the logo of the Chong Ruo family printed on it, and there were many staff members wearing the Chong Ruo family's uniform busily moving back and forth. The best shooting angles had long been occupied by the media controlled by the Chong Ruo family. Moreover, the Chong Ruo family's news media began to drive away other news media, saying that this place had been temporarily bought by the Chong Ruo family, and the broadcasting rights had been given to the head of the Chong Ruo family. These news media did not have the right to broadcast. All of this clearly showed that this platform was built by the Chong Ruo family in London. So, it was the Chong Ruo family's doing. Yes, I didn't expect such a traitor to appear in our London. The news media that had been driven away began to report in dissatisfaction. Under their intentional defamation, whether it was the audience at the scene or the audience watching the live broadcast, they all began to curse the Chong Ruo family. They felt that the Chong Ruo family had been involved with that woman from Yuzhong City and had become a traitor to humanity. However, although the platform was set up, Gu Xinyuan did not appear. It was not until noon that Gu Xinyuan finally appeared on the platform. Dear ladies and gentlemen, good morning. At this moment, a beautiful little girl suddenly appeared on the shore. She did not hold a microphone in her hand and just spoke with her mouth. Her clear and loud voice could be heard clearly by all the people on the shore and the media. Just this voice alone showed that this little girl was by no means an ordinary person. She was at least a famed sword-level swordsman. Just this voice alone showed that this little girl was not an ordinary person. She was at least a famous sword-level. As a former representative of London in the Octagon, Harry Chong Ruo's strength was one of the best among the younger generation of London. Most people in London recognized this little girl, but only a small number of people knew that this little girl was not a little girl, but a little boy. I believe everyone knows me, Harry Chong Ruo said with a smile. Everyone must be very curious as to why the Chong Ruo family would take over such an undesirable matter and do things for Miss Gu Shihan. Harry Chong Ruo said with a smile. Everyone must be very curious as to why the Chong Ruo family would take over such an undesirable matter and do things for Miss Gu Shihan. To be honest, Mr. Gahan and I are very good friends, so I also know Miss Gu Shihan. When I learned that Miss Gu Shihan had issued a challenge to His Majesty Long Shi yesterday, I immediately went to Miss Gu Shihan, hoping to persuade her to give up the challenge and not do such an overconfident thing. It was also a consideration for her own reputation. However, Miss Gu Shihan was not willing to give up the duel, so I could only settle for the next best thing. After a lot of persuasion, I finally persuaded Miss Gu Shihan to agree to the request of the people of London and accept the challenge. Miss Gu Shihan said on the spot that if any swordsman in London could defeat Miss Gu Shihan under the rules set by Miss Gu Shihan, then Miss Gu Shihan was willing to give up the duel and kneel in front of the palace for 3 days and 3 nights as an apology for her ignorance. Therefore, the Chong Ruo family took over the task of setting up this platform. This is also a token of our Chong Ruo family for the honor of London. Harry Chong Ruo's explanation could be considered to have cleared his actions. Instead, the people of London were somewhat grateful to the Chong Ruo family. Yes, if it were not for the Chong Ruo family's persuasion, this woman from Yuzhong City would have been hiding in the hotel and would not have come out. Then, they really would not have been able to do anything to her. Thinking of this, the audience immediately gave Harry Chong Ruo a warm round of applause, thanking Harry Chong Ruo for his contribution. Thank you, everyone. Harry Chong Ruo gave a standard British etiquette, but soon something happened. A few impatient people asked loudly, Miss Chong Ruo, you said that we have to defeat that woman under the rules set by her. What rules did she set? If she forbade us from using sword maidens, wouldn't we lose for sure? Of course it won't be these boring rules. Harry Chong Ruo smiled. I will tell you these rules now. If you're not satisfied with these rules, then I will immediately dismantle this platform and no longer participate in these things. Hurry up and say it. The audience immediately made a ruckus. First of all, the number of challengers. I know that there are about hundreds of sword bearers in London who want to teach my disappointing friend a lesson. However, Gu Shihan is a girl after all. It would be unfair for her to fight too many times in a day. So, Gu said that she will accept a maximum of 5 sword bearers a day. Second, in order to prevent everyone from swarming up, this platform is placed 500 meters away from the shore. Challengers who want to challenge Miss Gu must arrive at the platform without using boats or other means of transportation. The first challenger to arrive at the platform will be the challenger this time. Does everyone accept this? Third, the outcome of the competition will not be determined by the destruction of the personal shield like in the past. For our challengers, if they can cut the flag in the center of the platform, then it will be the challenger's victory. However, if the challenger is knocked into the water by Gu first, then he will be defeated by Miss Gu Xinyuan. These are all the rules set by Miss Gu Xinyuan. I wonder if everyone agrees with these rules? Harry Chong Rua asked with a smile. There was a lot of discussion among the audience. There was nothing much to say about the first rule. What people really cared about were the second and third rules. People were a little worried that the second rule would not be able to choose the truly strong challengers. It could only choose those who were good at swimming. As for the third rule, people were a little confused. What material was this flagpole made of? If it was made of something like imperial alloy, then there was no need to compete. Everyone should just admit defeat. As if he had seen through the audience's doubts, Harry Chong Rua added, "This flag is made of ordinary birchwood. I can guarantee that even an ancient sword maiden would be cut in half with a single slash." Wow. Hearing Harry Chong Rua say this, the audience suddenly went into an uproar. Everyone in the audience felt that this condition was too much. However, it wasn't that the condition was too difficult, it was that the condition was too simple. This was simply looking down on them. If the flag was really made of birchwood, then any sword chi would be able to cut the flag in half. Wouldn't it be fine if a sword wielder of the treasure sword rank were to release a few hundred sword chi? Could it be that this woman could block all the sword chi? This was like taking an exam with a full score of 100 points. You thought that you would pass if you scored 60 points, but the examiner told you that you only needed to score 1 point to pass. This sounded like a great thing, but in fact, it made the people of London feel deeply humiliated. How much did this woman, called Gu Shirhan, look down on the people of London to set such a condition? Did she think that the people of London could not even get a single point? Understand, this woman must be regretting challenging His Majesty Jindi, so she wants to take the initiative to admit defeat. She wants to lose to us so that she can quickly kneel at the entrance of the palace to apologize. A spectator said loudly, instantly resonating with the others. They felt that this spectator was right. This Gu Shirhan must be terrified and wanted to admit defeat as soon as possible. Actually, I also feel that this rule is too much. Therefore, we can only use a thunderous method to defeat Miss Gu Shirhan. Only then can we show the strength of London. Harry Chong Rua took a deep breath and said, "It is now 8 in the morning. According to Miss Gu Shirhan's arrangement, the challenge will officially begin at 10 in the morning. Please pass this news to your powerful sword bearers around you. Let Miss Gu Shirhan know how high the sky of London is and how deep the sea of London is." The conditions set by Gu Xinyuan were broadcasted across the entire city of London on television and then spread across the internet. A large number of people in London began to gather at the seaside, and at the same time, the sword bearers began to rush to the platform. All of a sudden, everyone was waiting for the arrival of 10 o'clock, waiting for Gu Xinyuan to appear. Chapter 1182. In everyone's eager anticipation, the time finally slowly arrived at 10 a.m., and at this time, a woman in a white top and casual shorts appeared on the platform. She flew over. Seeing Gu Xuanyuan's sudden appearance, the audience was very surprised. "Aren't you talking nonsense? She is a spirit sword level sword holder. Of course she can fly over." Some of the audience said angrily. "I understand. The second condition of Gu Shirhan is to limit the level of the sword bearers. Only the sword bearers of spirit sword level who can fly can reach the platform at the fastest speed, so those sword bearers below famous sword level have no chance to appear." At this time, the audience suddenly realized the true meaning of Gu Shirhan's second condition, and at the same time, they felt even more angry. You want a spirit sword level sword holder to make a move with such a broken wooden pole? Isn't this looking down on people even more? My compatriots have been waiting for a long time. When a sword chi in my hand hits the sea, the compatriots who want to challenge Miss Gu Shirhan can take action. Whoever reaches the platform first can challenge Miss Gu Shirhan. At this time, Harry Chong Ruo jumped out again. As he spoke, he held the sword lady in his hand. Everyone's eyes were fixed on the sword lady in Harry Chong Ruo's hand, waiting for Harry Chong Ruo's sword chi to be released. Harry Chong Ruo didn't let everyone wait for long. The sword chi quickly shot out from his sword lady and bombarded the sea, creating a splash of more than 3 meters high. Splash! In an instant, the sound of countless people entering the water could be heard. Perhaps thousands of sword holders jumped into the sea at the same time. It seemed that the anger caused by Gu Xinyuan this time was not small, so much so that the sword holders of the city of London could actually ignore their own face and directly jump into the cold sea to challenge Gu Xinyuan. But what surprised the audience was that almost all the sword bearers approached the platform by swimming. There was no sword bearer flying in the sky. Didn't this mean that there was no spirit sword level sword bearer challenging Gu Xinyuan? The audience was puzzled about this. Don't those spirit sword level sword holders care about the honor of the city of London? Sir Sword Spirit of Strife, why didn't any spirit sword level sword holder challenge Miss Gu Shirhan? Are they afraid that they can't beat Miss Gu Shirhan? The television host of the Chong Ruo family, who had the exclusive broadcasting rights for this challenge, asked the special guest commentator, Strife, who was sitting beside her. Miss Gu Shirhan is indeed a powerful spiritual sword-level swordsman, but in the face of this challenge related to the honor of the entire city of London, we, the spiritual sword-level swordsmen of London, of course, will not have any fear. On the contrary, it was because they wanted to maintain the honor of the city of London, so all the spirit sword wielders could not make a move now. After all, the conditions for winning are too simple. If we need to use spiritual sword level sword holders just to destroy a wooden pole, it would seem that our spiritual sword level sword holders in London are too useless. Why don't we give the opportunity to the young ones, to those low-level sword bearers? If a famed sword level, treasure sword level, or even an ancient sword level sword bearer could defeat Miss Gu Shirhan, who's a spiritual sword level sword bearer, wouldn't that show the strength of London? The Strife Sword Spirit said with a smile. I see. The host had a look of realization on his face, and the audience also gave him a thumbs up in agreement. That's right, using a spiritual sword tier sword wielder to defeat this hateful woman was going too easy on her. It would be best to use an ancient sword tier sword wielder to defeat this *TCH. That would be the best way to vent their anger. After the Strife Sword Spirit finished explaining, the swimming competition at the seaside was also over. A tall and strong man was the first to climb onto the steel platform, and the other sword holders who were still in the sea could only swim back helplessly. This man was about 2 meters tall, and the length of his arms and legs were the longest among all the competitors. No wonder he could swim to the platform at the fastest speed. Mr. Sword Holder, may I know your name? What's your level as a sword holder? Do you have anything to say to our audience? Harry Chong Ruo immediately went up to him. If they did not know that Harry Chong Ruo was a famed sword-level sword holder, the audience would have thought that he was an experienced host. My name is David Enzo, and I'm an ancient sword-level sword holder. I want to tell everyone in London that I'll do my best to let this shameless woman know how powerful the men of London are. After David Enzo finished speaking, he even bulged the strong muscles on his shoulders to show off his strength. There was a double meaning in David Enzo's words, and the male audience who understood the hidden meaning immediately became noisy. They shouted, "Well said, let her know how powerful the men of London are. I admire your courage, Mr. David." Harry Chong Ruo also shook the hand of the ancient sword-level sword holder excitedly. At the same time, he shouted to everyone through the microphone, "Everyone, let us give Mr. David our greatest encouragement." "Oh, hooray! Come on, kill her!" The audience cheered, and their voices formed a powerful sound wave, shaking the originally calm sea. If an ordinary person was in Gu Shirhan's position, they would have been scared silly by the aura of the tens of millions of people. All right, as usual, when my sword aura hits the surface of the sea, the first challenge will officially begin. Harry Chong Ruo said, Sir Strife, do you think our brave warrior, Mr. David Enzo, can win? What's his chance of winning? In the studio, the host asked the Strife curiously. First of all, I admire Mr. David Enzo's courage. As an ancient sword level sword holder, it's very impressive that he dares to challenge a spiritual sword level sword holder. However, I have to say that Mr. David Enzo's chance of winning is 0. He has no chance of winning. Everyone, please maintain your admiration for his courage. Do not have high hopes for the result. Otherwise, the greater the hope, the greater the disappointment. The Strife said. Although the spirit of Strife's words were meant to boost the opponent's morale and belittle his own, even ordinary people knew that although the conditions for victory were very simple and easy, it was impossible for an ancient sword-tier swordsman to win against a spiritual sword-tier swordsman. This ancient sword-tier swordsman could not even touch the flagpole. As soon as the Strife finished speaking, Harry Chong Ruo's sword aura hit the surface of the sea. The first challenge had officially begun. O spirits of the world, respond to the call of David Enzo. Release your light, show your beauty, and shine the world with the scorching light of the spirits. Release my sword mistress, the wind spirit. Listening to the chant of the ancient sword-level sword holder, Gu Xianyuan shook her head helplessly. It had been a long time since she had encountered such a Chinibyu chant before releasing the sword mistress. It was what they called the liberation prayer. Pooh! Before David Enzo's liberation prayer could finish, Gu Xianyuan appeared in front of David Enzo with lightning speed and kicked him in the chest, sending David Enzo directly into the sea. She didn't even waste a bit of extra effort. I hate people who talk so much nonsense. Gu Xuanyuan's ridicule was transmitted to the ears of all the audience through the radio equipment. Although they were enemies, all the audience couldn't help but nod in agreement. This kind of person was really too annoying. They should just kick him off the stage. Lord Strife, it seems like the result is just as you expected. Our Mr. David has no chance of winning. The host in the studio said with a smile. He was not the least bit sad about his side's defeat. This was to be expected, and the audience was not anxious either. After all, defeat was expected. No one thought that an ancient sword-tier swordsman could win. But I'm very curious about one thing, Lord Strife. Have you ever chanted such a liberation prayer before? The host's sudden sneak attack had caused Strife's face to turn as pale as a pig's liver. After a while, he smiled bitterly and replied, The past is unbearable to look back on. Don't ask about it. After the first challenger failed, the following challenges were still ongoing. Although Harry Chong Ruo had repeatedly told the ancient sword-bearers not to go up on stage, this did not diminish the ancient sword-bearers' desire to show off their skills. In the end, the second and third challengers were both ancient sword-level sword holders. Naturally, they were all KO'd by Gu Xianyuan in one move. This made the audience very unhappy. When it came to the fourth match, they booed the ancient sword wielders who were present. These ancient sword wielders smiled awkwardly as they backed out of the competition. However, there were still a few hundred sword wielders who wanted to challenge Gu Xianyuan at this time. When the fourth challenger of the day went on stage, it was no longer an ancient sword-level sword holder who tried to show off. Instead, it was a treasured sword-level sword holder. This result immediately piqued the interest of the audience. If the ancient sword-level sword holder was completely defeated, then the treasured sword-level sword holder should have a chance of winning. After all, for a treasured sword-level sword holder, victory would be at their fingertips if they touched the flagpole lightly. Chapter 1183. Lord Sword Spirit of Strife. What do you think the chances of this sword wielder winning are? In the studio, the host asked the Sword Spirit of Strife. How should I put it? Compared to the ancient sword wielder just now, it's not completely impossible. For example, the Sword Maiden of the Path of Killing has a certain chance of touching the flagpole in the middle of the platform. However, this chance is not very high. As long as the spiritual sword wielder is focused on guarding the flagpole, the chances of breaking through are still very small. The sword spirit of strife thought about it and finally came to such a conclusion. If the challenger performs well, then there's a 20% chance of success. If Miss Gu Shirhan performs well, then the challenger has no chance of success. Oh, according to Lord Sword Spirit of Strife, this time, our challenger still has a certain chance. We, the sword wielder, can also defeat the spiritual sword wielder, Gu Shirhan. The host suddenly said excitedly. Even the audience watching the show in front of the TV became excited. It seemed that they had begun to celebrate the victory of the sword wielder in advance. The sword spirit of strife could only smile bitterly. He did not think that there was anything to be excited about. The chances of winning were still very small. However, there was no other way. After all, people only like to listen to good words and not the truth. It was like when your child was taking the college entrance examination. A teacher told you that although your child's grades were not very good, as long as he performed well, there was a certain chance that he would be able to get into a university. Another teacher told you that you should not even think about it. It would be lucky if your son could get into a university. Obviously, the latter teacher was telling the truth. However, you would definitely like the former teacher and hate the latter teacher. Even if the latter teacher was right and proved that he had foresight, you would not change your view of this teacher. Instead, you would deeply hate the teacher for not saying good things and curse your child to not be able to get into a university. This was how things were in the world. Looking back at the challenge platform, after Harry Chong Ruo announced the start of the match, the sword wielder on the platform quickly released his sword lady. Then his entire person, along with his sword lady, disappeared from the platform without a trace. Even the cameras could not track the sword wielder's voice. Great! This sword maiden is really a sword maiden of the killing Tao. The audience screamed in excitement. They remembered what the strife spirit had said. If the challenger had a sword mistress who was proficient in the path of slaughter, he would have a great chance of winning. The audience cheered like a tsunami, as if victory was within their grasp. Forgive the London audience for misinterpreting the strife spirit's words as a great chance. They were, after all, amateurs. However, in this way, the viewing value of the match was greatly reduced. The challenger was in a state of invisibility, which caused the audience to only be able to see Gu Xianyuan calmly standing by the side of the flagpole. Other than that, there was nothing else to see. Be careful. Slowly approach the flagpole. Do not arouse the suspicion of this bitch. The sword wielder, who was invisible, kept giving orders to his sword maiden. This man-made sword maiden was very obedient to the orders given by its master, carefully approaching the flagpole. Gradually, beads of sweat appeared on the forehead of the sword wielder. Because he was so focused, he didn't notice the sweat on his forehead at all. He didn't even bother to wipe it off, allowing the beads of sweat to drip onto the platform. As a result, the moment the drop of sweat came into contact with the platform, the sword wielder felt a strong gust of wind blowing against his face, causing his forehead, that was covered in sweat, to feel cold. What's going on? The sword wielder looked up and saw Gu Xuanyuan's expressionless face appearing in front of him. Snow, do it! The sword wielder instantly made the correct decision, which was to give way to the sword maiden beside the flagpole and immediately attack the flagpole. He wanted to cut the flagpole in half before he was shot into the water. This was his only chance to win. Not bad. Gu Xianyuan actually praised the sword wielder, and without saying a word, he first slashed at the sword wielder's shield, and with a single slash, the shield was directly split apart. Then, she grabbed the collar of the sword wielder and directly threw him out. Am I going to fall into the water? The moment he was thrown out, the sword wielder already knew that he would inevitably fall into the water, but he hoped that before he fell into the water, his sword maiden would be able to cut the flagpole in half. After all, his position was very far from the flagpole in the center of the platform. This spirit sword wielder might not be able to protect his flagpole before he fell into the water. But what the sword wielder never thought was that the next second after he flew out, he felt his body heavily hit another body. Then, the two bodies flew out of the platform at the same time and fell into the bitter and salty sea. What did I hit? Did Snow succeed or not? After falling into the water, the sword wielder still had such a guess. But at this time, the audience was silent. They only saw that on the originally calm platform, Gu Xuanyuan's body disappeared in an instant. When she appeared again, she had already pulled up a person's body and then threw it out like a baseball. The curve of the body that crossed over just happened to pass the flagpole in the center of the platform. Like a billiard ball hitting a figure in the void, the two bodies entangled together flew out and fell into the sea. Miss Gu Shirhan wins. The host Harry Chong Ruo immediately announced, and the audience was in an uproar. Just now, they felt that victory was in their hands. How did it end in an instant? Lord Sword Spirit of Strife. In fact, we were very close to victory just now, right? As long as this sword wielder is a little more careful, we can cut the flagpole in half, right? Feeling that the studio was full of embarrassment, the host quickly said, this sentence could be regarded as comforting the slightly hurt hearts of the audience. I'm afraid that's not the case. The sword spirit of strife smiled bitterly and told the truth. I think Miss Gu Shirhan should have seen through the position of these two people long ago. Maybe she wanted to save us some face, so she deliberately waited for a while. Otherwise, in the end, she would not directly hit the body of the sword wielder with the body of the sword maiden, and then drive both of them into the sea. This is something that can only be done when the position of both parties is very clear. I see. The host's face was a little embarrassed. After all, this was equivalent to being slapped hard in the face. Then, Lord Sword Spirit of Strife, can you do this? The host asked again. The Sword Spirit of Strife was stunned for a moment and said somewhat unconfidently, I should be able to. When the hour hand passed 11 o'clock, the last treasure sword tier swordsman and his sword lady were thrown into the sea by Gu Xianyuan. The broadcast that had been prepared for the entire night was hastily drawn to an end after an hour. The first day's 5 challengers, including 3 ancient sword tier swordsmen and 2 treasure sword tier swordsmen, were all defeated by Gu Shirhan. The first day of the competition had ended just like that. Although they were already mentally prepared, the people of London were a little unhappy that 2 sword wielder had failed just like that. There was even a faint, ominous premonition in their hearts. They felt that this challenge of the people of London was very likely to end with a complete victory for the opponent. However, the people of London quickly comforted themselves. After all, only the sword wielder and the sword wielder had failed the challenge. The truly capable sword wielder and the spiritual sword wielder had not made a move yet. With these 2 sword wielder around, victory was still within easy reach. Therefore, the second day of the challenge began under the anticipation of the people of London. However, the difference between the second and first day was that when the first day started, there were already a few hundred ancient and treasured sword wielders jumping into the sea, trying to fight for the right to compete with Gu Xianyuan. However, when Harry Chong Ra announced the start of the challenge on the second day, no one jumped into the sea for a full 4 to 5 minutes. All the sword wielder were watching from the shore, and the entire coast fell into a dead silence. No way. Did that be *TCH just beat the sword wielder of London? The audience was still thinking sadly, thinking that their sword wielder had been scared out of his wits by the competition yesterday. Of course not. This is just the defeat of the sword wielder of the sword wielder and the sword wielder. When the host raised the question to the sword spirit of strife, the sword spirit of strife denied it without hesitation. This is just the sword wielder of the sword wielder and the sword wielder of the sword wielder who has figured out the reality of the situation and stopped making unrealistic fantasies. I'm guessing that it won't be long before the sword wielder of the famed swords take the stage. This is a real, fierce battle between giants. The sword spirit of strife was speaking the truth. However, 5 minutes after the challenge began, a sword wielder finally stood up. He was a handsome British gentleman with a head of blonde hair and 3 scabbards on his waist. Obviously, from the 3 scabbards, one could tell that he was a sword wielder of the famed swords. The sword wielder of London finally broke his silence and was ready to make his move. I wonder how this sword wielder is going to cross the sea. Is he going to swim over like he did yesterday? As soon as the host finished his words, he saw the sword wielder suddenly release his Lady Blade Master. Then, he threw a thin wooden board from his dimensional pocket. The moment the wooden board flew out, the Lady Blade Master immediately picked up her sword wielder. At the same time, she leaped onto the wooden board and sped along the surface of the sea as if she was surfing. Finally, she landed lightly on the platform. The whole process was smooth, and it was done in one go. His coolness was as high as 5 stars. Hooray! The audience was stunned at first. Then they clapped wildly and cheered at the top of their lungs. This way of crossing the sea was just too cool. It was so cool that no one had any friends. At the same time, it could be seen that this sword wielder was not on the same level as the sword wielder from yesterday. This was a true powerhouse. Of course, this deserved a good cheer from the people of London. Ladies and gentlemen, I believe that everyone, including me, has begun to feel their blood boiling when they see the appearance of this lord. Our television station has received first-hand information. This sword wielder is called Ollie Hank Chaplin. He's a powerful sword wielder of the famed swords level. He'll definitely be able to wash away our failure yesterday and end Miss Gusherhan's pride today. The host reported the latest information to the audience in a timely manner. At the same time, his tone was very confident, as if the victory of this sword wielder was just around the corner. Chapter 1184. I'm Ollie Hank Chaplin, miss. Nice to meet you. After standing on the same platform as Gu Xianyuan, the British gentleman first politely saluted Gu Xianyuan. This action immediately aroused the praise of the audience, saying that the Londoners were the #1 gentlemen in the world, and the people of Yuzhong were wild monkeys without etiquette. And Gu Xianyuan didn't say much and just nodded slightly, which made the people of London even more unhappy. Sure enough, he was a wild monkey without etiquette. Miss Gusherhan, although I'm a famous sword-level swordsman, in terms of level, I'm not as good as Mrs. Spiritual Sword level, and I don't have the strength to break Mrs. Personal Shield. However, to me, breaking that flagpole is a piece of cake. After all, it's only a matter of a few dozen strands of sword chi. Speaking of this, Chaplin paused, so I suggest that Miss shake hands with me and end it with a draw. Miss, you don't have to challenge His Majesty Long Shurjiendi. As for kneeling at the gate of the palace to admit your mistake, I'm willing to bear it for Miss and kneel at the gate of the palace for 3 days and 3 nights. Chaplin's words caused another uproar among the audience. Mr. Chaplin was really a kind and considerate person. He was actually willing to kneel at the gate of the palace for 3 days and 3 nights in place of this bitch. This was really touching. Some female audience members were even moved to tears by Chaplin, shouting loudly to marry themselves to Chaplin. So with such a simple sentence, Chaplin's favorability and sense of existence in London instantly increased greatly. With such a sentence, our Mr. Chaplin jumped from an unknown star to a famous star on the B-list. No need. Unfortunately, in the face of Chaplin's good intentions, Gu Xianyuan didn't appreciate it and coldly refused. That's a pity. I really can't bear to see a beautiful woman like Miss suffer that kind of pain. Chaplin shook his head sadly. His face was filled with tenderness for the fairer sex, as if his victory was already inevitable and Gu Xianyuan was destined to lose under his sword. However, Miss Gusherhan, you don't have to feel lonely. Even if you're defeated by my sword in the end, I will still enjoy the sunset in London with you, watch the elegant and brilliant aurora in the sky, and kneel in front of the palace with you for 3 days. I hope Miss can understand my heart. At the last moment, Chaplin did not forget his gentlemanly role, causing the young ladies in the audience to cheer again. Go to hell. A few black lines appeared on Gu Shirhan's forehead. This guy was too disgusting. Begin. Harry Chong-Ruo seemed to be unable to stand this disgusting fellow. Without waiting for this fellow to finish speaking, a sword aura directly slashed the surface of the sea. This also meant that the second day's challenge had officially begun. Go, my comical sword. It turned out that Chaplain's sword lady was called the Comical Sword. Well, I didn't expect there to be a sword lady called the Comical Sword in this world. This was very compatible with Chaplain's name. Just like the Comical Sword's name, the Comical Sword lady had a very comical face. Her eyes curved like crescent moons when she smiled, and the two small eyeballs seemed to have seen through the world of mortals. Although the eyeballs were looking at Gu Xianyuan opposite him, the audience watching the live broadcast on TV also felt that this comical face was looking at them. It's too scary. No wonder it's a comical face. The audience sighed in unison. Comical face, hurry up and use the comical light wave. The target is that flagpole. Under Chaplain's command, the comical sword lady on the platform changed in an instant. From a girl with a slightly comical facial expression, she suddenly turned into dozens of comical faces. The comical sword lady's body was gone, leaving only her face floating in the air. These faces kept shaking up and down, and the audience in front of the TV suddenly felt disgusted in their hearts. This comical face was simply poisonous. Just looking at these faces, the audience had the urge to vomit last night's dinner. Go! Chaplain shouted, and the eyeballs of those comical faces instantly radiated a golden sword chi. An eyeball was a sword chi, and dozens of comical faces were 60 or 70 comical sword chi. These comical sword chi were mighty ling, and their momentum was threatening, as if they could shoot the opponent into a sieve in an instant. In the face of these threatening sword chi, Gu Xianyuan's expression did not change, or Gu Xianyuan's whole body did not change, and she did not move. She just stood there coldly, looking at the comical performance in front of her. Why didn't Gu Shihan block it? Did she completely give up blocking it? In the studio, the host shouted incredulously. Why didn't she move? As if she didn't see these sword chi at all. As soon as the host's voice fell, an amazing scene appeared. These golden, comical sword chi all looked very powerful, and they were aiming at the flagpole. They could definitely be used on the flagpole. But in fact, after these sword chi and the flagpole intersected, the flagpole was still standing intact, while these sword chi all fell on the platform behind the flagpole, or in the sea, splashing a burst of water. What happened just now? Seeing this scene, the host was stunned, and all the audience was stunned. What was going on? Could it be that this woman, Gu Shihan, was cheating, and the flagpole was not made of wood, but of dimensional alloy? The director's reaction was also very fast, and he immediately called up the picture taken by the ultra-high-speed camera just now, and replayed the video of the sword chi and the flagpole at 100 times the speed. Only then did the audience discover that the fact was not as they had imagined, that the flagpole was made of dimensional alloy. Instead, these golden comical sword chi all brushed past the flagpole. Although the nearest sword chi was only 1 centimeter away from the flagpole, it was still 1 centimeter away. In other words, these 60 to 70 comical sword chi all missed their target, and the hit rate was 0. This is really funny. The host who discovered this said dryly and hesitantly. The truth was, as she said, it was really funny. No, why is this happening? Chaplain was also completely dumbfounded. 60 to 70 sword chi were all exposed at the right time. Did God want him to be funny? Okay, your funny performance is over. You can go. Just as Chaplain was in a trance, Gu Xianyuan had already appeared in front of Chaplain like a ghost, and then gently pushed Chaplain's personal shield with her left hand. Chaplain flew out lightly and fell into the sea with a splash, ending his funny challenge. I'm sorry. I think Lady Luck might be standing by Miss Gu Shihan's side today. That's why such a funny situation happened. It's just a coincidence. It's just a coincidence. The host didn't even believe what she said. However, the audience chose to believe the host's words. The host was right. All of this must have been a coincidence, or Chaplain was too pretentious. He was a blind man and an idiot. The sword bearers would definitely win the next round. The audience's thoughts were beautiful, but the reality was cruel. After Chaplain, 3 more famed sword-level sword bearers went up to challenge. The process of the battle was like a repeat of the previous battle. All the famed sword-level sword-bearers planned to use a large amount of sword chi to attack and cut the flagpole at the same time, and Gu Xianyuan also stood still, letting the sword chi attack the flagpole wantonly. But the result was just a repeat of the first battle. The sword chi could not hit the flagpole, and those famed sword-level sword-bearers were also kicked into the sea by Gu Xianyuan after the first wave of sword chi attack, without any accidents. When the fourth famed sword-level sword-bearer was kicked into the sea, the studio was already silent. The host was so embarrassed that she could not say a word, because she did not know what to say at this time. No, this is not an accident. The sword spirit of strife, who had been looking down at the personal terminal in his hand throughout the whole process, suddenly raised his head and said to the microphone, "Chaplain is not an idiot, and the other sword-bearers are not blind either. With so many sword chi, even one of them could hit the flagpole blindly. How could all of them miss?" I've been watching the replay just now, and I found that all the sword chi's trajectory should be correct at the beginning, and it should be able to hit the flagpole, the sword spirit of strife said with certainty. "Lord Sword Spirit of Strife, are you saying that someone interfered with the trajectory of the sword chi halfway, so the sword chi could not hit the flagpole?" The host asked in horror. "I'm afraid that is the truth." The sword spirit of strife nodded solemnly. "How is that possible? How could the sword chi's trajectory be changed by someone?" The host still could not believe it. "It's not impossible. The sword chi can interfere with the trajectory of the sword chi." The sword spirit of strife gritted his teeth and said. The meaning behind this sentence was self-evident. The only person on the platform who could use sword chi to interfere with the sword chi of the smiley face was Gu Xianyuan. Just now, Gu Xianyuan seemed to be standing still and did not do anything, but in fact, she had secretly shot invisible sword chi. To be able to do all these things without making a sound, and at the same time to cause all the sword energy to deviate from their trajectories. Moreover, to make all the sword energy just brush past the flagpole. What kind of terrifying strength was needed to achieve such a feat? At this moment, everyone no longer looked at Gu Xianyuan with contempt and disdain. Instead, they were deeply frightened. This woman's strength had probably reached a level that they could not even imagine. This challenge might really make London fall to the ground. Chapter 1185. In the studio, the host said helplessly, "It's going to be the last challenge of the day soon. I wonder who the last swordsman will be. It would be great if there's a swordsman of the spiritual sword level." It was obvious that the swordsman of the famed sword level was no match for Gu Xianyuan. Hence, they could only count on the swordsman of the spiritual sword level. Both parties are of the same level. They're both swordsmen of the spiritual sword level. If that's the case, they won't lose. That was what most of the audience was thinking. That won't happen. The most powerful swordsman of the famed sword level in London has yet to make a move. I think the swordsman of the spiritual sword level won't show up. The Strife Sword Spirit said with a smile. The most powerful swordsman of the famed sword level in London? Who is it? The host was stunned and asked subconsciously. That person is so far away, but he's right in front of us. Harry Chong Rual watched as the fourth famed sword-level swordsman was rescued into a boat by the staff members on both sides of the platform. As he stood on the shore, the host, Harry Chong Rual, suddenly let out a sigh. A silhouette appeared behind him, and a bespectacled, muscular, and beast-like sword mistress appeared behind Harry Chong Rual. This sword mistress was none other than Harry Chong Rual's famed sword, Gryffindor. "Lady Gryffindor, can you give me a ride?" Harry Chong Rual asked as he turned his head to the sword mistress. The sword lady of Gryffindor did not say a word. She only lifted Harry Chong Rual's body with one hand and squatted down slightly. The muscles in her legs bulged instantly, and she leaped into the air. She drew a curve in the sky and landed directly on the platform. Lady Gryffindor Sword Mistress actually jumped from the shore to the platform with a standing long jump. Furthermore, she did it while holding onto a person. This showed how terrifying the Sword Mistress's physique was. She was like a living lion. That's why my last opponent today is you, my friend. Gu Xinyuan said in surprise when she saw Harry Chong Ruo standing opposite her. What can I? Harry Chong Ruo smiled and said frankly, although we are good friends, I am still the sword-bearer of the City of London. I bear the honor of the City of London. I will not allow you to destroy our honor. All right, well said. Harry Chong Ruo's impassioned speech was directly transmitted to the ears of tens of millions of viewers through the television broadcast, causing all the viewers to cheer loudly. The original bad feelings caused by the Chong Ruo family and Gu Xinyuan's entanglement were also washed away in this speech. At least most of the audience in London would no longer feel that there was anything wrong with the Chong Ruo family. As for the fact that the Chong Ruo family made a lot of money because they controlled the exclusive broadcasting rights, it was naturally ignored by the audience. Although we are friends, I will definitely do my best to defeat you. So, I hope that you can also use your true abilities and let the two of us have a hearty battle. Harry Chong Ruo said loudly. No problem. As you wish, my friend. Gu Xinyuan nodded, and the last battle of the second day officially began. Heart of Gryffindor. At the beginning of the battle, Gryffindor's sword used its unique skill. She held the sword in her hand horizontally, and a wisp of smoke floated out of Gryffindor's sword. The smoke instantly transformed into a mighty, golden-haired lion. Its sharp eyes stared closely at its opponent, as if it was ready to launch a fatal blow at any time. This was the ultimate skill of Gryffindor's sword. It could summon the soul of the golden sword lion contained in Gryffindor's sword and let the golden sword lion help it in battle. This golden sword lion was no stranger to Gu Xinyuan. During the Great Eight Assembly 3 years ago, Gryffindor's sword's golden sword lion had a battle with Ashima, the Saintess of Cologne. Although Harry Chong Ruo was defeated in that battle, the powerful strength of this golden sword lion left a deep impression on everyone in the audience. If not for Ashima's Sword of the Prophet being able to predict all the movements of Gryffindor's sword, the victory would have been Gryffindor's sword. Compared to the golden sword lion from 3 years ago, the current golden sword lion, from its golden fur to its pair of sharp teeth, was far more powerful and mighty than it was 3 years ago. Clearly, Harry Chong Ruo's swordsmanship had improved tremendously in the past 3 years, so much so that the golden sword lion that he summoned possessed even greater strength. How? The golden sword lion let out an angry roar and pounced towards Gu Xuanyuan's head. At the same time, it swung its tail backward. This was a common attack pattern of lions. If the first pounce did not succeed, the next tail swing would be able to deal a fatal blow to the enemy who was caught off guard. It's useless, kitty. Gu Xinyuan moved backward and avoided the golden sword lion's attack. Then, the celestial slayer sword in her hand curled around the golden sword lion's tail, and the lion's tail was curled up by the celestial slayer sword. Next, the golden sword lion, whose tail was controlled, took a few hits from Gu Xinyuan. A large piece of the golden fur on its body was cut off, and the entire red lion's butt was exposed. Upon seeing this scene, the host in the studio said, "It seems that the golden sword lion is no match for Gu Shihan. After all, the two of them are one realm apart. The difference in strength is too great." The truth was indeed as the host said. The golden sword lion was no match for Gu Xinyuan at all. It was like a kitten that was pressed under Gu Xuanyuan's sword and beaten up violently. No, the situation is not that simple. Our goal is not to defeat Gu Shihan, but to destroy the flagpole. Now, although Gu Shihan has suppressed the golden sword lion, the golden sword lion has also stalled the opponent at the same time. This has given Harry Chong Ruo a chance. Don't forget, there are 3 of us on the platform now. The Strife Sword Spirit said excitedly. As soon as the Strife Sword Spirit's voice fell, the Sword Lady Gryffindor, who was standing on the spot, suddenly raised the tip of the sword in her hand and began to chant in a low voice. Immediately, the seawater in the nearby sea began to roll continuously and finally formed a monstrous wave that rushed towards the entire platform, engulfing it. This is a good chance. The Sword Lady Gryffindor is a rare mage-type sword lady. She can cast all kinds of natural elemental spells. The sea is the strongest home ground for Gryffindor's sword. Gryffindor's water spells can be strengthened by several times, or even more than 10 times. This is the best chance. Seeing this scene, the Strife Sword Spirit screamed excitedly and explained. Moreover, it's not a wave. It's a wave made of water. Even if you have thousands of sword auras, don't even think about cutting off the wave of the sea. The sword aura can't stop the wave. Gushirhan can't stop the attack of the sea. The Strife Sword Spirit was so excited that he was about to roar. Indeed, under the impact of the powerful wave, the entire flagpole was bent. At this time, if there was another wave, the entire flagpole would be broken in an instant. In fact, under the control of Gryffindor's sword, an even bigger wave was already brewing. In the next second, the wave would hit the flagpole. The television screen shook for a while, and then was directly hit by the sweeping wave. The entire screen instantly became snow white. When the wave receded, the audience realized that the flagpole in the center of the platform was already empty. The big flag had disappeared. "We won!" The host shouted in the studio while waving his hands. "We won! We won!" The audience in London was also infected by this exciting scene. They screamed wildly at the television and began to celebrate the victory that belonged to London. This victory was really not easy. They had to thank CCTV and AVTV. Oh no, the flagpole is still there. Fortunately, the Strife Sword Spirit was still calm at this time. He grabbed the host beside him and pointed to a corner of the television screen. Over there, the flagpole did not break. It just flew up. Indeed, only then did the audience realize that the flagpole was actually swept up by the wave and flew into the air. Although the wooden pole was a little bent from the impact, it was still a complete wooden plank. It did not seem to have been broken. "Go!" Harry Changrua commanded loudly. The golden sword lion that was entangled with Gu Xianyuan immediately gave up on entangling Gu Xianyuan and pounced towards the flagpole in the sky. At the same time, under the control of Gryffindor's sword, another wave swept towards the flagpole, intending to strangle it in the air. Unfortunately, the two of them were still a step too late. A graceful figure flashed past, and the sword in his hand hit the flagpole first in front of the golden sword lion and the wave. The flagpole instantly became a speeding arrow under this attack. It flew past the golden sword lion and the wave that followed. The target of the flagpole was Harry Changrua, who was hiding at the side. Harry Changrua, who was caught off guard, let out a scream. His chest was hit by the flagpole. As the flagpole was made of wood and did not have any dimensional alloy in it, Harry Changrua's close-fitting shield was not triggered. Instead, he was hit directly by the flagpole. After letting out a scream, he flew out and fell directly into the sea. The flagpole lost all its momentum after the impact and landed at the edge of the platform, less than a meter away from the sea. Sigh. The audience let out a collective sigh. As long as the flagpole was not broken, and as long as the flagpole was still on the platform, Gu Xianyuan did not fail. On the contrary, Harry Changrua, who had a huge advantage, lost his life and fell into the sea in the blink of an eye. "I'm sorry, I made a fool of myself," Harry Changrua, who was dripping wet, said to Gu Xianyuan as he grabbed the edge of the platform with a bitter smile. "You're not bad. You're the most powerful famed sword-class swordsman I've ever seen." Gu Xianyuan wiped the non-existent sweat on her forehead expressionlessly and then flattered. "I almost lost. To be able to force me to this point, you're the most powerful among all the famed sword-class swordsmen I've ever seen." "Thank you." Harry Changrua lowered his head in shame. Seeing this scene, although their side had lost, the audience still applauded in unison and cheered for Harry Changrua. "Did you see that?" Gu Shirhan said that our famed sword-class swordsman is the most powerful in the world. The audience said excitedly to their friends, unaware that they had already taken Gu Xianyuan's words as wisdom and a standard to assess their strength. Phew! Harry Changrua also heaved a sigh of relief. It seemed that taking the risk to help Gu Shirhan was the right choice. His Changrua family should be able to usher in a period of rapid development, and he could also become the true leader of the younger generation in London. This was not a loss. What no one noticed was that at this time in the sea, under a nearby cliff, a few small heads had secretly retracted. Chapter 1186. With the defeat of Harry Chong Ruo, the challenge of the second day was officially over. Although 2 days had passed and that damn woman was still standing on the platform, the audience was not anxious. Since Harry Chong Ruo, a famous sword-level swordsman, could force Gu Shirhan to the point of almost defeat, then when the spirit sword-level swordsman made his move, the victory would be inevitable. Thinking of this, the audience began to look forward to the challenge of the third day. The challenge of the third day came as scheduled. Just like the previous 2 days, the ancient sword level, treasure sword level, and famous sword level swordsmen no longer dared to challenge and humiliate themselves. However, there was still an unforeseen event on the third day. Shortly after the appearance of Gu Shirhan, all the audience suddenly heard an earth-shattering dragon roar. 2 true dragons suddenly rose from the sea, suspended in the sky, and quietly stared at everyone near the platform. The audience screamed, thinking that the 2 true dragons were going to attack humans, and began to flee in horror. Don't panic. We have the protection of the superdimensional wall. The true dragons can't hurt everyone. The swordsman in charge of maintaining order around immediately said, and with great difficulty, they managed to maintain the stability of the scene. Humans, don't panic. We have no malice. We just came to watch an interesting battle. The 2 true dragons suddenly spoke human language, which made the audience completely relieved. It turned out that these true dragons didn't come to London to find trouble, but to watch the battle. Then there was no problem. They almost scared themselves to death. However, on second thought, the humans present were a little shocked. They didn't expect that even the true dragons would begin to care about this battle. It seemed that the importance of this challenge had exceeded their imagination, and it had spread to Yuanko's side. If they could defeat this woman in front of the true dragons, it would greatly increase the face of the city of London. Thinking of this, the audience began to get excited. However, because of the appearance of these 2 true dragons, there was a stalemate on the scene for a while. After waiting for a while, the first challenger did not appear. Hurry up and start. We're still waiting to go back for lunch. The 2 true dragons hovering in the air said impatiently when they saw that the challenge had not yet begun. In fact, at this time, the spirit sword level swordsmen who wanted to challenge Gu Shirhan had already appeared. There were about a dozen spirit sword level swordsmen standing in a group. At first, they were still discussing and arguing with each other about who should be the first to issue the challenge. However, when the 2 true dragons began to urge them, these spirit sword level swordsmen could only say with a wry smile, "Let anyone go up first. Otherwise, it will make the true dragon clan think that we, the people of London, are all cowards. Then let me meet Miss Gu Shirhan." A spirit sword level swordbearer took the lead to leap out, directly floating in the air, and finally landed lightly on the platform. Long live! There was a burst of cheers from the audience. This action of floating in the air proved that this time, the sword holder was already a spirit sword level sword holder. I'm the Golden Sword Spirit. This spirit sword level swordsman first introduced himself to Gu Xianyuan, the audience, and the 2 true dragons in the sky. Of course, this Golden Sword Spirit's self-introduction was quite long. Considering that this was just a cameo that wouldn't appear many times, he didn't write it out. At the beginning of the battle, the sword lady of the Golden Sword Spirit took the lead to shoot out thousands of sword chi. Our Golden Sword Spirit's idea was very simple. The reason why the previous sword chi tactic was unsuccessful was not because there was a mistake in this strategy, but because the sword chi shot out was too little. As the upper limit of a spirit sword level swordbearer, the upper limit was to shoot out all of the sword chi at the same time. It was impossible for Gu Xianyuan to block so many sword chi. Unfortunately, this Golden Sword Spirit was wrong. Gu Xianyuan waved the punish immortal sword in her hand, and the same number of sword chi flew out, colliding with the sword chi shot out by the Golden Sword Spirit. After an earth-shattering roar, The flagpole in the center of the platform was still safe and sound. However, Gu Xuanyuan's sword chi was far stronger than the golden sword spirit's sword chi, so much so that in the end, all of the sword chi landed on the golden sword spirit. Although, because of the protection of the shield, and the fact that Gu Xuanyuan's sword chi didn't have the intention to kill, the golden sword spirit didn't suffer any harm, but his whole body was still sent flying by the impact of the sword chi, falling into the sea and ending his challenge. The whole process was over in less than 2 minutes. Seeing the golden sword spirit fall into the water so easily, all the audience were in disbelief. What happened just now? He clearly let the spirit sword level swordbearer challenge, so why did he still fail? And the way he failed was so miserable. He failed in just 2 minutes, and he was even worse than the ancient sword level swordbearer at the beginning. What happened? The ancient sword level and treasure sword level swordbearers at least had a chapter less words, but you, a spirit sword level swordbearer, should have at least 2 chapters more. Why did you fail in less than 500 words? The hearts of the audience were filled with such questions. They eagerly looked at the sword spirit strife in the studio, wanting to know the answer from the sword spirit strife's mouth. However, the sword spirit strife could only smile helplessly, indicating that he also had no idea why. Seeing this scene, the people of London who were extremely confident and felt that victory was in sight 2 minutes ago began to feel a sense of despair. They felt that perhaps this time, London was really going to fail miserably. Let me, the Sword Spirit Wiki, compete with you. In the midst of the oppressive atmosphere, the second Spirit Sword level swordbearer rushed forward and started the first battle with Gu Xianyuan today under the anticipation of the audience. This Sword Spirit Wiki seemed to have learned from the Golden Sword Spirit's failure just now. He no longer started with a sword chi, but directly let his sword lady rush towards the flagpole at an extremely fast speed, planning to directly cut this flagpole with his own sword. Gu Xianyuan naturally went up to meet the attack and started a thrilling battle with this sword lady around the flagpole. In an instant, the two of them were locked in a stalemate. This spirit sword level swordbearer's tactic was also very simple. He let his sword lady fight with Gu Xianyuan, and by taking on Gu Xuanyuan's attacks, he tried to continuously close the distance between himself and the flagpole. As long as the distance was close enough, even if this spirit sword level swordbearer had to take on Gu Xuanyuan's ultimate move, he could still easily cut the flagpole in half. One had to admit that this was an effective tactic. This spirit sword level swordbearer was indeed constantly getting closer to the flagpole during the battle. Seeing that everything was going according to his plan, and the battle was about to be won, this spirit sword level swordbearer made a fatal mistake. He thought that Gu Shirhan, who was entangled by a sword lady, wouldn't have the chance to attack him. But in fact, while his sword lady was constantly getting closer to the flagpole, she also constantly leaked out a gap in her defense. As a result, Gu Xianyuan casually bombarded it with several hundred sword chi. As a result, Sword Spirit Wiki and the Golden Sword Spirit from before were directly blasted into the sea by the sword chi. However, this Sword Spirit Wiki was luckier than the Golden Sword Spirit because he persisted for 3 minutes, which was faster than the Golden Sword Spirit by 1 minute, although this was meaningless. The failure of Sword Spirit Wiki once again caused the entire venue to fall into silence. The host in the studio didn't know how to speak, and the mood of all the people in London was extremely low. If the shadow of the failure just now was said to have planted a seed, then this seed had now become a small tree, deeply rooted in their hearts. The people of London began to fear. They feared that if even a spirit sword level swordbearer couldn't do anything to this woman, then what should they do? I'm Tianlu Sword Spirit, and I'm willing to fight with Miss. At this time, the third spirit sword level swordbearer who issued a challenge also appeared on the stage. Although this swordbearer was from London, he had yellow skin, black hair, and black eyes. Obviously, he was a Londoner with Chinese blood. Otherwise, he wouldn't have taken the name Tianlu, which had a strong Eastern connotation. Miss Gu Shirhan, we're both spirit sword level swordbearers, so I won't bully you. Let's have a real battle. Don't worry about the flagpole or falling into the water. Whoever's personal shield breaks will be the loser. How about it? This Tianlu sword spirit said in a deep voice. Sure, Gu Xinyuan nodded. Tianlu sword spirit dared to make such a suggestion to Gu Xinyuan. Of course, there was a sense of helplessness in it, but it could also be a kind of plan. Tianlu sword spirit vaguely felt that this flagpole might be a trap set by Gu Xinyuan. She used a flagpole that looked very easy to cut in exchange for the condition that falling into the water would mean defeat. If it was a competition of the hard power of the sword-bearer, then it was possible to win by using the most traditional way of fighting. Tianlu sword spirit was still somewhat confident in this. He was almost 60 years old this year, and he had been a spirit sword level sword-bearer for 30 years. In these 30 years, he had accumulated more than 3 million quarks of sword essence. Unfortunately, because he couldn't find an immortal sword level sword lady who could synchronize with him, he had been stuck in the position of a spirit sword level sword bearer. But these sword essence were indeed a real advantage. So, Tianlu sword spirit felt that he had a strong chance of winning in a conventional fighting method. So, Tianlu sword spirit proposed such a fighting method. In the following battle, Tianlu sword spirit also proved his strength. He was no longer like the previous two spirit sword level sword bearers who failed and fell into the water in less than 2 to 3 minutes. Instead, he fought with Gu Xinyuan for more than 20 minutes, which was already a remarkable improvement. But then again, unless Kenzu was reborn, it was simply impossible to defeat Gu Xinyuan in a battle of the same level. So after more than 20 minutes, Tianlu sword spirit's personal shield was split by Gu Xuanyuan's sword, and he officially lost. Shame! Tianlu sword spirit's shame was indeed from the bottom of his heart. Just now, he was still full of confidence that he could defeat his opponent fair and square, but now he was hit to the extreme. Throughout the whole battle, whether it was him or his sword lady, all of their attacks were blocked by Gu Xinyuan. His own attack didn't even touch Gu Xuanyuan's skin before he was defeated. This was like a League of Legends match. When the opponent destroyed his base crystal, the damage dealt to the hero was actually 0. This kind of failure was enough to completely destroy a person's self-esteem. Just like Tianlu sword spirit, he was clearly a middle-aged man in his 50s or 60s, but after admitting defeat, he seemed to have aged 20 years in an instant, becoming a 70 or 80-year-old man. In fact, Gu Xinyuan didn't want to crush his opponent like this. After all, both of them were the most important fighting force of mankind. If the opponent was defeated, it wouldn't be fun. Gu Xinyuan also wanted to give way and take some damage. But the problem was that because of Zhu Xian's sword, Gu Xinyuan didn't have a personal shield on him. As long as the opponent's attack landed on him, the fact that he didn't have a personal shield would be exposed, which would lead to endless trouble. This was what Gu Xinyuan didn't want to see, so he could only use this kind of crushing method to end the battle. Who's next? Gu Xinyuan tidied up his clothes and glanced at the shore, but those spirit sword level sword bearers on the shore instinctively took a step back. Unexpectedly, no one dared to look at Gu Xinyuan and dared to go up and fight with Gu Xinyuan. These spirit sword level sword bearers weren't afraid of losing, nor were they afraid of death, but they were afraid of losing face. They would rather die than lose face in front of the people of London. But what they didn't know was that retreating at this time was the biggest loss of face for them. They almost lost the face of their entire life. Chapter 1187. What's wrong? Don't we Londoners have the courage to fight? Seeing the retreat of these spirit sword wielders on the shore, the hearts of all the London spectators couldn't help but thump, and a great sorrow welled up in their hearts. It would have been fine if he had lost to the other party, but he had also lost the courage to fight. Everyone in London was going to be humiliated. If he were to meet people from other base cities, he would be mocked for the rest of his life. Please, please have a real Londoner appear. All of the Londoners wailed in their hearts, begging for a new challenger to appear. Is the challenge over? At this moment, one of the two true dragons circling in the sky suddenly spoke in the human language. But didn't I hear that there are 5 challenges every day? It's hard to say. Another true dragon smacked his mouth. Maybe we've made a mistake. They only challenge 3 times a day. After all, those shrimp soldiers and crab generals with brains smaller than a booger often do this kind of thing. The conversation between the 2 true dragons made all the people in London blush instantly. This conversation was much more painful than a direct slap in the face. Some of the people in London even burst into tears. Lord Strife, what do you think we should do now? In the studio, the host, who was feeling awkward, was about to discuss something with the Strife as a guest. Suddenly, he realized that his seat was empty. The Strife was nowhere to be seen. He had vanished without a trace. What happened? The MC quickly asked the director. The director shrugged helplessly and said, "Just now, Lord Strife opened the window and flew out." So where did the spirit of Strife go? This was an answer that did not require an answer. After a few minutes, a figure suddenly landed on the platform and said coldly, "Miss Gu Shirhan, it's been a long time." That's right, our Strife Sword spirit actually flew directly from the broadcasting studio in London that was tens of kilometers away from the platform and appeared in front of Gu Xianyuan. "Since Lord Knight has appeared here, do you also want to fight with me?" Gu Xianyuan asked. "Not bad." The Strife Sword spirit glanced at the spirit sword wielders who were hesitating and said with a sneer, "Miss Gu Shirhan, you're not qualified to accept the challenge of the real powerhouses in London. Let me, the appetizer, accompany you to practice first. If you can defeat me, it's not too late to find other powerhouses." The words of the Strife spirit shamed the other spirit sword wielders on the shore. Since the Strife spirit could become the chief knight of Dunkirk Fortress, the most important fortress in London, the strength of the Strife spirit was indisputable. It was one of the best spirit sword wielders in the entire city of London. To put it bluntly, even if the Strife sword spirit claimed to be the #1 spirit sword tier swordsman in London, the other spirit sword tier swordsman would have nothing to say. Ever since the Strife sword spirit became a spirit sword tier swordsman, it had never been defeated in a duel between spirit sword tier swordsmen. If the Strife sword spirit said that it was just an appetizer, then there was no main course to speak of among the spirit sword level sword bearers. It doesn't matter. Let's start the battle then. Gu Xianyuan did not expose the Strife sword spirit's lie. She made a gesture, indicating that the battle could begin. "Miss Gu Shirhan, there's something I'd like to confirm with you. The reason why you spent the same amount of time on other low-level sword bearers when you could easily defeat a spirit sword tier sword bearer, is it because you're deliberately suppressing your strength?" The Strife sword spirit asked. You could tell. Gu Xianyuan frowned and said calmly, "That's right. I'll use the sword essence of the level of the sword bearer I'm fighting against. Otherwise, those ancient sword tier sword bearers won't be able to stay on this platform for even a second." After listening to Gu Xianyuan's answer, the audience was in an uproar again. Oh my god, Gu Xianyuan had been suppressing her combat strength in the previous battles. "I see." The Strife sword spirit nodded. "I have another favor to ask. Miss Gu Shirhan has always been holding her own sword maiden and fighting as a sword master. However, Miss Gu Shirhan has never told us the name of your sword maiden. I wonder if you can let me know the name of your sword maiden, Miss Gu Shirhan?" The Strife sword spirit asked expectantly. The Strife sword spirit's question also raised a question that the people of London were very concerned about. Indeed, they had been fighting with Gu Shirhan for 3 days, but they did not even know the name of their opponent's sword maiden. This was too embarrassing. The appearance of the execution immortal sword was very ordinary. It looked like the most ordinary treasured sword. In addition, Gu Xianyuan had deliberately concealed the execution immortal sword, so the people of London still didn't know who the sword maiden in Gu Xianyuan's hand was. No, Gu Xianyuan could not reveal the true identity of the fairy culling sword, but she was not willing to lie to the Strife sword spirit, so she firmly refused. "All right, then I'll have to offend you." The Strife sword spirit stopped asking questions. The regicide sword lady, who had beaten Ao Guang up before, appeared once again. Then, she quickly disappeared into the shadows and disappeared without a trace. As the sword that assassinated the greatest emperor in the history of Rome, Caesar, The regicide sword was undoubtedly a sword maiden of the path of killing. This was also the sword maiden that posed the biggest threat to Gu Xianyuan. Once a spirit sword maiden entered the state of invisibility before the opponent took the initiative to attack, even Gu Xianyuan would find it difficult to detect the opponent's position. Therefore, Gu Xianyuan did not dare to be careless. After seeing the King Slayer's sword disappear, she took a step forward and blocked in front of the flagpole. This way, as long as the King Slayer's sword's dagger moved, Gu Xianyuan would be able to detect it immediately and protect the flagpole. The King Slayer's sword was also deeply afraid of this. Therefore, when the King Slayer's sword entered stealth mode, the entire scene suddenly became quiet. Gu Xianyuan, who was guarding the flagpole, did not move, and the King Slayer's sword did not dare to attack. Both sides were in a stalemate for a full 30 minutes. It was also a 30-minute silent show on the platform. F***CK. I didn't come here to bask in the sun for 30 minutes. The noon sun was extremely scorching. The audience who came to watch the battle felt a little nauseous and dizzy. Therefore, one of the audience could not help but complain. Although I'm also suffering from the sun, I have to admit that this is the longest battle we've ever fought against Gu Shirhan. Another audience member next to him said coldly. However, there was no joy in this sentence, only deep helplessness. Sigh. Gu Shirhan's patience seemed to have run out. She suddenly pulled the flagpole from the chessboard in her hand and held it in her hand. This action surprised everyone. At this time, they had realized that such a silent and stiff situation was finally coming to an end. But what did Gu Shirhan want to do by pulling out the flagpole? The next development of the story made all the audience's hearts hang in their throats. After Gu Xianyuan pulled out the flagpole, she began to take a steady and uniform step by step, approaching the position of the sword spirit strife. The linear distance between the two sides was constantly shrinking. What should I do? The sword spirit strife saw that Gu Xianyuan was constantly approaching him, and his mind was in a mess. Judging from the close combat ability that Gu Xianyuan had shown just now, once he was close to Gu Xianyuan, he would almost certainly be pushed into the sea. Then his only chance was to take advantage of the time when Gu Xianyuan was close to him and let the King Slayer sword cut off the flagpole in her hand. But this was also what Gu Xianyuan hoped for. She was using this method to compete with him. But once he started to make a move, he would definitely be at a disadvantage. Whatever, if I don't make a move now, then there really won't be a chance. Anyway, my sword lady is the most accurate murderous sword lady. Even if you are heavily protected by Gu Shirhan, the King Slayer sword still has a chance to succeed. Thinking of this, the sword spirit strife no longer hesitated. With a thought, a figure appeared behind Gu Xianyuan like a ghost. The King Slayer sword in his hand looked at the flagpole without hesitation. As long as the sword could touch the flagpole slightly, the victory would belong to the King Slayer sword. A little too slow. Gu Xianyuan smiled. The Immortal Slayer sword unexpectedly blocked the King Slayer sword in front of the King Slayer sword, blocking the sword that was almost certain to kill. Don't hesitate. Continue to attack. Use endless attacks to deal with her. I don't believe that she will always be flawless. The sword spirit strife shouted in his heart. The King Slayer sword that had received the command was like a high-speed rotating gear, and it launched an endless attack on Gu Xianyuan at an astonishing speed. So fast, my eyes can't see clearly. How did the King Slayer sword lady attack? How many times did she attack? I can't see it at all. On the stand, the audience rubbed their eyes desperately as they spoke. The situation of the battle had suddenly changed dramatically. The battle that was so boring that they wanted to sleep just a moment ago had now become so intense that their eyes could not take it all in. Everyone, don't panic. Our computer is currently analyzing. It will soon be able to analyze the battle data. In the studio, the host who was singing a monologue said, "Soon, the computer that was responsible for analyzing the real-time live broadcast transmitted the data to the host. Oh my God, dear audience, this is a number that you will never imagine. The King Slayer sword lady actually launched 21 attacks per second. Oh my god, what a terrifying attack speed. The host let out a gasp of admiration. 21 attacks per second. Even for a spirit sword wielder, it was indeed an extremely terrifying number. It was the highest proof of the strength of the sword spirit strife. However, the audience who heard this number did not look happy at all. Instead, they looked even uglier. Although they could not clearly see the attack speed of the Kingslayer sword, they could clearly see the flagpole that was always fluttering in the air in Gu Xuanyuan's hand. If the Kingslayer sword really attacked 21 times per second, didn't that mean that Gu Xianyuan also blocked 21 times per second? Moreover, it was a block with a 100% success rate. This was unimaginably terrifying compared to 21 attacks. Was this guy really human? Goodbye. Finally, Gu Xianyuan walked step by step to the front of the Sword Spirit Strife and said to the Sword Spirit Strife with a slightly regretful and apologetic expression, "Goodbye." The Sword Spirit of Strife replied with a bitter smile. Then, Gu Xianyuan thrust the flagpole in her hand forward, and the Sword Spirit of Strife was directly pushed off the platform by Gu Xianyuan, falling into the sea. The battle that lasted for 30 minutes was finally over. Chapter 1188. After the defeat of the Sword Spirit Strife, another Spirit Sword level swordsman who was ashamed and unbearable went on the stage to fight with Gu Xianyuan, but the result was self-evident. In less than 10 minutes, he was thrown off the stage by Gu Xianyuan. He had really lost all his face. However, this was also a relief for the other Spirit Sword level swordsmen. At least today's 5 challenges were over, and the rest of the Spirit Sword level swordsmen who hadn't fought could go home with peace of mind. It was just that whether it was the swordsmen or the audience, their hearts were heavy when they went home, as if they were carrying an iron ball that weighed hundreds of kilograms. The audience, who originally thought that as long as it was a famous sword level swordsman, they could easily win, but they were extremely desperate to find that even a Spirit Sword level swordsman couldn't do anything to that woman from Yuzhong City. On the first day of the challenge, 99% of the people in London didn't expect such a situation to happen, but at the end of the third day, this situation did happen. All the swordsmen in London were trampled under the soles of Gu Xuanyuan's feet, and they were trampled on with their faces. I didn't expect the swordsmen in London to be so trashy. I think it's necessary for us to persuade Father not to stick to the rules of hundreds of years ago. There's nothing to be afraid of in London. It's better to let them be snacks for us. When the 2 true dragons left, the words they left behind made the people of London extremely frightened and angry at the same time. They never thought that this challenge would actually arouse the disdain of other Yuan Ko. If Yuan Ko really looked down on London because of this, then wouldn't the peaceful and safe London become the target of other Yuan Ko? Just like the unlucky Yuzhong City, which had been attacked by Yuan Ko twice in 3 years. Each time, there were heavy casualties and millions of people died. This scene was really terrible. What made the people of London even more worried was that this was only the 3rd day of the challenge, but all the Spirit Sword level swordsmen were completely defeated by Gu Xianyuan. On the 4th day of the challenge, were there really any Spirit Sword level swordsmen willing to go on the stage? On the 4th day, the challenge began as usual. The 2 true dragons once again appeared in the nearby sky to watch the battle. However, apart from the 2 true dragons, there were also 2 quadrotor drones hovering above the platform. According to the scanning equipment, these drones were not human-made drones. They should be Yuan Ko's drones. The people of London were no strangers to such drones. There were some Yuan Kos in the Palace of Valhalla, and these Yuan Kos used all kinds of advanced technology to fight. These drones were the scouts of these Yuan Kos, or rather, the scouts of the entire Palace of Valhalla. The senior Yuan Ko of the Palace of Valhalla might also be watching this challenge through the broadcast of these drones. The True Dragon Clan and the Martyr's Palace were 2 of the most powerful Yuan Ko factions surrounding Yuzhong City. The appearance of their scouts meant that the nearby large Yuan Ko factions had already set their eyes on this challenge. Lord Strife, why are the scouts of the True Dragon Tribe and the Valiant Spirit Palace here? The host asked the Strife Blade Spirit who had just returned to the studio. There's nothing strange about it. Ever since the defeat yesterday, the Strife Sword Spirit's face had remained ashen. He no longer had the smile from before. The True Dragon clan might be considered a neutral faction, but the Martyr's Palace still wants to destroy us. They want to know the strength of London even in their dreams. Now that there's such a good opportunity in front of them, of course they won't let it go. Isn't that a terrible thing? If the Martyr's Palace sees through us, won't they launch a huge attack on us? The host asked anxiously. You don't have to worry about that. As long as His Majesty Longshire is still around, the scum of the Martyr's Palace won't have the guts to touch London. The Strife Sword Spirit's words seemed to be an insurance for everyone, but it made everyone's heart sink. Although the Dragon Lion Swordarch was still very young for a Swordarch, he was almost 60 years old. Even if he lived to 100 years old, he would only be able to persist for another 40 years. Who knew if the Palace of Martyrs would have any ill intentions towards the city of London after 40 years? Moreover, 40 years was only the most optimistic estimate. Most Sword Emperors were around 85 years old, which meant that the people of London only had 25 years left. Then we can shoot down the 2 drones so that the Martyr's Palace won't see through us. The host suggested excitedly. No, the Strife Sword Spirit shook his head. If we shoot down the drones, it will prove that we're guilty, and the Martyr's Palace will look down on London even more. The host laughed dryly and ended the topic. In fact, when the host said this, it meant that London had begun to feel guilty. Because of the crazy and explosive comments on the online forum about those Spirit Sword level swordsmen who flinched yesterday, the Spirit Sword level swordsmen already knew that if they avoided the fight at this time, not only would they not be able to protect their image, but it would also make their image even worse. Therefore, on the 4th day, they didn't retreat like they did on the 3rd day. The 5 spiritual sword bearers challenged Gu Xianyuan in an orderly manner, and there wasn't even a minute's interval in between. But there were no surprises in these challenges. Although each of the spiritual sword bearers had done their best and used a lot of very novel and unexpected tactics, they were all useless in front of Gu Xianyuan. But in front of Gu Xianyuan, all of these were useless. Gu Xianyuan dissolved them one by one. Finally, she fell into the water and left the platform dejectedly. In the face of continuous failures, London people didn't even have the strength to criticize, and they accepted it very calmly. It seemed that they weren't very calm, because the ratings of the battle broadcast on the 4th day had plummeted by about 80%, and 4 out of 5 London people had given up watching the live broadcast. It wasn't that they didn't have the time to watch the live broadcast, but they didn't have the courage to watch the live broadcast, and they didn't have the courage to accept the failure of their city in the fastest and most direct way. On the 4th day, after the last Spirit Sword level swordsman was defeated, the audience left with a sad look on their faces. The staff of the TV station also tidied up all kinds of equipment. The 2 true dragons were bored and yawning as they prepared to return to the sea, and the 2 drones in the sky also began to lazily return when an abnormality happened. There was a burst of faint explosions in the sky, and a black void gate was slowly opening. Not good. The void gate is open. A universe-level Yuan Ko is coming. The audience let out a cry of surprise. When they saw the void gate open, they thought that Yuan Ko was preparing to attack them. The one who walked out of this void gate seemed to be a real Yuan Ko. He wore a thick pirate suit, and his left eye was covered by an eye patch, while the color of his right eye was extremely sharp. This was clearly a powerful pirate. In this era, the sea was already the forbidden land of the Sea Clan, so naturally, the profession of pirates could no longer exist. At this time, the only pirate who could appear here was the legendary Yuan Ko. However, when this pirate appeared, the audience who were preparing to escape stopped in their tracks and looked at the pirate floating in the air with excitement. The staff who had finally tidied up the various wires of the live broadcast equipment immediately plugged them back, and then excitedly pointed the camera at the pirate floating in the air. Pirate's sword celestial. Gu Xianyuan looked straight at the figure of the pirate in the sky and read out his title word by word. In addition to Long Shur Jindi, who was an Emperor Sword level swordsman in London, there were also 2 immortal sword level swordsmen. One of them was the explosive flame sword celestial, who was the youngest among all the immortal sword-level swordsmen. She was also one of the most promising immortal sword-level swordsmen. Unfortunately, this immortal sword-level swordsman had suddenly disappeared 3 years ago. Moreover, she had disappeared on the way to Yuzhong City to rescue her. In these 3 years, no trace of her had been found. However, Longsher Jindi had always confidently told the others that the explosive flame sword celestial was only trapped in some place, and that she was still alive in this world. In addition to the explosive flame sword celestial, the remaining immortal sword-level swordsman was the pirate sword celestial. This pirate sword celestial was also a legendary figure. He was born in a family that had never had a swordsman before. His father's biggest dream was to become a pirate king, to be able to sail freely on the sea, and this dream had naturally been passed on to his son. However, as luck would have it, this son had become a swordsman, and he had gone further and further on this path. In the end, he had reached the peak of the immortal sword-level swordsman, and was only one step away from the peak. Even though he had reached the peak of the swordsman, this immortal sword-level swordsman had not given up on his dream of becoming a pirate king. Or rather, his immortal sword-level sword mistress, Seven Warlords, Sea Sword had the same dream as him. As the supreme sword of pirates, the Seven Warlords Sea Sword and the Pirate Sword Celestial were a perfect match, and their dreams had also merged together. In order to pursue his dream, this Pirate Sword Celestial rarely stayed in the city of London. Most of the time, he was with his sword mistress, sailing freely on the sea in his old wooden sailboat, the Seven-String Siren, fighting with various sea race Yuan Ko. Even most of the sea race Yuan Ko couldn't do anything to him. He was really like a real pirate king. It was said that this pirate sword celestial had already sailed out to sea 5 months ago. Gu Xinyuan originally thought that it was impossible to meet this pirate sword celestial returning, but unexpectedly, this pirate king actually appeared in front of him at this time. I heard that there's big fun here. How can an old pirate like me miss it? The pirate sword celestial who had come out of the void stroked his big, sloppy beard. Kid, let's fight. Okay. Gu Xinyuan hesitated for a moment, but his answer was very neat. The immortal sword-level swordsman is going to personally deal with that damn woman. An immortal sword-level swordsman is going to teach a spirit sword-level swordsman a lesson. This news instantly spread throughout the city of London like a hurricane. Even the West Sea Dragon Palace and the Glastonbury base at the bottom of the sea instantly knew this explosive news. Chapter 1189. The news of the Pirate Sword Immortals Challenge to Gu Shirhan spread like a whirlwind throughout the city of London and the entire human network. Although the rules set by Gu Xinyuan did not prohibit the challenge of an immortal sword-grade swordsman, this still greatly shocked the entire human world. An immortal sword-grade swordsman actually took the initiative to challenge a spirit sword-grade swordsman. This kind of unprecedented thing actually happened, and it was too much of a bully. The world also felt that Gu Shirhan was extremely bold to have the guts to agree to fight with an immortal sword-grade swordsman. However, on second thought, since this Gu Shirhan had the guts to challenge Longsher Jindi, then it was not too surprising that she would fight with an immortal sword-grade swordsman. If she did not have the guts to fight with an immortal sword-grade swordsman, then there was no need to challenge Longsher Jindi. It's settled. This time, Gu Shirhan will definitely lose. When the people of London heard that the Pirate Sword Immortal had issued a challenge, they all sighed with relief. However, the people of London still felt extremely aggrieved. If an immortal sword-grade swordsman defeated Gu Shirhan, then it would be no different from Longsher Jindi. If the Londoners won, they would still lose their face. Aggrieved. Too aggrieved. A Londoner posted on the forum, and then countless people also replied with aggrieved. Too aggrieved to reply to this thread. Within an hour, they received hundreds of thousands of replies, and among these hundreds of thousands of replies, there was not even one who disrupted the formation. This showed how aggrieved the Londoners were. Just as the Londoners were feeling extremely aggrieved, in two places around London, there were also two groups of people discussing what had happened today. What? You said that woman defeated all the spirit sword grade swordsmen in London, and in the end, that crazy pirate challenged her, and she agreed. In a dazzling room decorated with all kinds of gold, corals, shells, and other marine products, an old man with two tall dragon horns on his head asked the two young true dragons who were kneeling in front of him. His hair and beard were all white. "Yes, your majesty. We saw it with our own eyes. It can't be wrong," the two dragons hurriedly said. The old dragon in front of them was the ruler of the entire West Sea race, the West Sea Dragon King A.O. Run. "All right, the two of you can leave." A.O. Run nodded his dragon head, and the two true dragons left. A.O. Run sat on his seat and pondered for a while, then said to Dragoness, standing outside the door, "Go call that disappointing guy 28 over. Everyone, this is the scene of today's challenge. What do you think?" In the same hall, three men with dignified auras were sitting there. The three of them looked very ordinary, but each of them had a monstrous aura. If Gu Xianyuan was here, she would have discovered that these three men all had the aura of a flood-grade Yuan Ko. Very powerful, a man in a blue coat, surrounded by endless electric currents, took the lead and said, "According to the analysis of my drone, this woman has at least hidden more than half of her strength. She didn't use her full strength to deal with those spirit sword-grade swordsmen. This woman looks good. I'm going to snatch her over and make her my woman." A man wearing a traditional Mongolian costume, with a bloody scimitar hanging on his waist, said with a monstrous, murderous aura, "Don't underestimate this woman. In terms of moves alone, I'm afraid I'm not her opponent." A man wearing a green robe, holding a green dragon crescent blade, with a beard hanging down to the ground and a face as red as a monkey's, but said, "That's right. I also think that this woman will become a huge threat to us in the future. Why don't we make the first move and kill this woman, lest she becomes another long, sure Jindy in the future?" Tesla, who was flashing with electric currents, suggested, "The bravery of an ordinary man is of course not enough. As long as my army moves, the entire city of London will be turned into powder. What's there to be afraid of for a mere woman? Why make an unnecessary move?" Genghis Khan said, unconvinced. "Humph, if you had listened to me back then and joined forces to besiege Longshire when he was still an immortal sword-grade swordsman, we wouldn't be in such a passive situation now, guarding this boring place all day." Tesla glared at Genghis Khan. Who was Genghis Khan? His temper was as violent as a raging fire. How could he stand this kind of insult? He argued with Tesla on the spot. The anger between the two of them grew bigger and bigger. Then, Genghis Khan brandished his blade, and Tesla discharged electricity. The two of them directly fought in this hall. "Fine, you two fight here for a few days and nights. I will go and check the situation tomorrow." Guan Yu completely ignored the earth-shattering battle between the two Runga-level Yuan bandits behind him and murmured to himself. Unlike the desolation on the fourth day of the challenge, on the fifth day, the two sides of the platform were once again full of humans. The number of people was even more than double the previous peak. The reason was very simple. One of the greatest pride of the city of London, the pirate sword spirit, was finally going to make a move. It was time for the glory and arrogance of this woman, Gu Shirhan, to end. The clock reached 10 o'clock in the morning. As before, Gu Shirhan was the first to appear on the platform on time, waiting for the arrival of the challenger. Because of the pirate sword immortal, of course, no spirit sword level swordsman dared to come out and challenge Gu Shirhan today. The pirate sword immortal did not let Gu Shirhan wait for an hour or even a few hours before appearing like those old seniors who flaunted their seniority. Just 2 minutes after Gu Shirhan appeared, an old, pure wood wooden sailboat appeared on the side of the platform like a ghost. No one saw clearly where this old wooden sailboat came from and when it came to the side of the platform. This sailboat seemed to have emerged from the bottom of the sea. Boom! The dozens of old-fashioned cannons on both sides of this wooden sailboat suddenly released waves of uniform roars. After a full 49 cannon salute, a rope ladder was thrown down from this wooden sailboat. A white-haired but still very vigorous old man climbed down from the rope ladder in a methodical manner. It was hard to believe that this slow-moving old man was the immortal sword-level swordsman of the city of London. Junior Yuzhong Gu Shirhan pays respect to senior pirate sword immortal. Seeing the appearance of this old man, Gu Shirhan did not dare to lose her etiquette and took the lead to greet him. We're here to fight today. We don't need these superficial things. The pirate sword immortal just waved his hand and pulled out a sword Maiden from the scabbard. He made a provocative gesture to Gu Shirhan and said with a smile, "This king will not bully you. I will first use my spirit sword level sword Maiden to fight with you. You are not qualified to experience my Shichibukai sword. Come on, don't underestimate this king's old bones. Today, this king is going to see some blood." The pirate sword immortal really had the demeanor of a pirate. As soon as he appeared on the platform, he wanted to directly fight with Gu Xianyuan. He didn't even give Gu Xianyuan a chance to talk back. Sure enough, he was the most straightforward pirate. "Yes, I dare not disobey." Gu Xianyuan also raised her kill immortal sword and answered the pirate sword immortal's provocation with her own actions. This battle between the immortal sword-level swordsman and the spirit sword-level swordsman entered an extremely fierce frontal confrontation from the beginning. The pirate sword immortal's spirit sword-level sword maiden was called Fallen Demon, which was a spirit sword that made the entire sea race extremely afraid. Because this fallen demon was the legendary sword of the dragon slayer hero Ziegfeld. It was bathed in the dragon blood of the world's strongest fallen dragon, Fafnir. It was known as the dragon slayer sword that could rule all the dragons in the world. The pirate sword immortal was able to run amok in the entire sea in the era of the spirit sword level swordsman. The ordinary sea race could only run away when they saw the pirate sword spirit. The reason was because of this dragon slayer sword that had great lethality to the dragon race. Now, this dragon slayer sword was held in the hands of a beautiful woman wearing a glittering golden armor, and this beautiful woman was naturally the fallen demon sword maiden. Most people in the world knew that the fallen demon had the dragon slayer attribute that specialized in restraining the dragon race. But very few people knew that the fallen demon was also an extremely powerful swordswoman. Before the fallen demon was bathed in dragon blood, and before it was crowned with the name of the strongest dragon slayer sword, the fallen demon was just an ordinary demon sword. And the owner of the fallen demon, Ziegfeld, used this ordinary demon sword to kill the insufferably arrogant fallen dragon, Fafnir, and thus achieve the power of the fallen demon's dragon slayer. Therefore, it was not her dragon-slaying attribute that made her famous in the world, but her superb swordsmanship. The moment the fallen demon's sword maiden came into contact with Gu Xianyuan, she directly suppressed Gu Xianyuan with an unparalleled continuous swordsmanship. The attacks of the fallen demon's sword maiden came one after another. Often before the potential was exhausted, it would immediately follow up. The whole battle was completed in one go, not giving the opponent any chance to breathe. Under such a powerful attack, Gu Xianyuan was beaten back step by step, and very soon she retreated to the edge of the platform and was only one step away from falling off the platform. Long live the pirate sword immortal! The audience shouted crazily, seeing that Gu Xianyuan was already standing on the edge of the platform and was about to fall into the sea like those sword bearers he had defeated before, becoming a pitiful drowned rat. The audience instantly went crazy. They used heart-wrenching roars to vent the anger and joy in their hearts. Too good, this was really too good. However, what the audience did not expect was that Gu Xianyuan, who took the last step, did not fall. Although she was still in a suppressed state, Gu Xianyuan had already withstood the powerful continuous attacks of the fallen demon. Both sides were in a deadlock at the edge of the platform, unable to escape from this range. I say, what is the pirate sword immortal doing? At this time, as long as he breaks the flagpole, we will win. Seeing that Gu Xianyuan withstood the attack of the fallen demon, a plan came to his mind, and he immediately shouted, "Are you stupid?" The surrounding audience glared at this audience member. Since a sword immortal like the pirate sword immortal has made a move, of course we have to defeat her fair and square. If we still use this kind of trick, we, the people of London, will never be able to raise our heads again. The person who had suggested this immediately nodded. That was right. Defeating her head-on was the only way to save the face of the city of London. Unfortunately, these two people did not know that this was the only chance for the city of London to win in the past 5 days. Chapter 1190. Power of Illusion. Seeing that she still couldn't knock Gu Xianyuan into the sea, Sky Demon Seductress panicked and directly used her advanced skill, Power of Illusion, which could increase the strength of her arm by 20 times for 5 seconds. Note, not attack power by 20 times, but arm strength by 20 times. Such a short burst of strength could make an opponent who was used to Sky Demon Seductress's original strength completely unprepared. Caught off guard, she would be sent flying by the power of Sky Demon Seductress, and even the bones in her arm might be broken. Back when she killed Fafnir, Sky Demon Seductress used this sudden burst of strength to send Fafnir's dragon body flying, exposing the location of her reverse scale. Then, Sky Demon Seductress struck her reverse scale and killed her. This time, Sky Demon Seductress used this move again, hoping to restore the battle with Fafnir and send Gu Xianyuan flying when she was caught off guard. But what Sky Demon Seductress never expected was that when she swung out this 20 times burst of strength, her sword actually missed. At this time, Gu Xianyuan disappeared in front of her, nowhere to be seen. Where is this guy? Sky Demon Seductress's heart was filled with panic. Could it be that her opponent saw through her plan, and she already knew that she used Power of Illusion? Thank you. In the next second, Sky Demon Seductress heard Gu Xuanyuan's voice of thanks. Sky Demon Seductress instinctively attacked the direction of the voice, but her sword slashed at a tape recorder. Not good. Sky Demon Seductress turned pale with fright. She didn't think that Gu Xianyuan would be so cunning, using a tape recorder to play her voice, so that her second strike landed in an empty place. When experts exchanged blows, a difference of one move was enough to take the opponent's life, not to mention that Sky Demon Seductress had already wasted 2 moves. Thank you. After another word of thanks, Sky Demon Seductress didn't attack blindly this time, but planned to use her eyes to confirm the opponent's position. In the end, she just happened to see a sword piercing her eyes. Bang! At the end of the day, Sky Demon's Fallen was an expert. In the nick of time, he had barely managed to block the attack. However, what awaited Sky Demon's Fallen was an endless barrage of attacks. Sky Demon's Fallen seemed to know no exhaustion. Before the previous barrage had even ended, the next barrage had already arrived. Wasn't this description very familiar? It seemed to be the description used to describe Sky Demon Seductress. This was the truth because Gu Xianyuan had actually completely replicated Sky Demon's Lost Fall swordsmanship just now, using the exact same swordsmanship as Sky Demon's Lost Fall to launch round after round of attacks, and Sky Demon's Lost Fall's response was far from as perfect as Gu Xianyuan's just now. Or rather, Sky Demon's Lost Fall completely didn't know how to face its own attacks. In the blink of an eye, the situation had turned around, and Sky Demon's Lost Fall was instead forced to the edge of the platform by Gu Xianyuan. Guhan took a step forward, and Sky Demon's Lost Fall nimbly fell into the sea. Good swordsmanship. The pirate sword immortal didn't interfere with the battle between Sky Demon Seductress and Gu Xianyuan. He watched the entire battle with the attitude of a bystander, not even touching the flagpole that was right in front of him. Just like that audience member said, even if he, the pirate sword immortal, didn't go so far as to slap himself in the face. After Sky Demon Seductress fell into the water, Gu Xianyuan didn't continue her pursuit. Instead, she took a step back to the center of the platform. The pirate sword immortal also summoned Sky Demon Seductress back into his hand with a thought and sheathed it. It's over. The audience members who were excited, happy, and heart-wrenching just a moment ago all became mute in an instant. They could only blame the sudden turn of events. They were clearly about to win, but in the blink of an eye, they became the loser instead. Young man, you're amazing. You can actually copy your opponent's attack and defeat the proud sky demon seductress. Whose disciple are you? Are you the disciple of that little guy with me? The pirate sword immortal didn't seem to be surprised by sky demon seductress's defeat. Instead, he started asking about Gu Xuanyuan's master. Not at all. Sky demon seductress's swordsmanship is so great that I've only seen a few in my life. She only lost to me because her heart was in a mess. Gu Xuanyuan was telling the truth. Sky demon seductress was indeed an extremely powerful swordsmanship expert. Among all the swordsmanship experts that Gahan had fought before, there were very few who could defeat Sky Demon Seductress in terms of swordsmanship. Among the sword maidens, only the Darksteel Heavy Sword could do so. Even the Heavenly Sword was slightly inferior to Sky Demon Seductress. As for Yuan Ko, there was only that Li Bai and the swordsmanship expert who had defeated Gu Xuanyuan in the Lunyan clan. Even Gu Xuanyuan, whose swordsmanship had reached the realm of rules, couldn't help but feel happy after seeing Sky Demon Seductress's swordsmanship. So, she deliberately gave up the upper hand so that Sky Demon Seductress could fully display her swordsmanship. So, she could learn during the battle and absorb the strengths and weaknesses of Sky Demon Seductress's swordsmanship. This was also the reason why Gu Xuanyuan was able to use Sky Demon Seductress's swordsmanship to counterattack and finally defeat her. After explaining the reason for the failure of Sky Demon Seductress, Gu Xuanyuan hesitated for a while before answering. As for my master, please forgive me for keeping you in suspense for now. I'll answer you after the battle is over. That's good. Since you can defeat Sky Demon Seductress, I won't be arrogant. I'll personally experience your skills. The pirate sword spirit drew from his waist, and the seven warlords' sea sword, which was constantly shining in red, orange, yellow, green, cyan, blue, and purple colors, was held in the hands of the pirate sword immortal. Seeing this scene, Gu Xuanyuan's pupils shrank instantly. The pirate sword immortal did not release his sword lady, but held the seven warlords' sea sword. Could it be that the pirate sword immortal was the same as her, a sword master? Soon, the pirate sword immortal proved Gu Xuanyuan's guess with facts. He who was holding the seven warlords' sea sword directly fought with Gu Xuanyuan, who was holding the kill immortal sword. From the point of view of swordsmanship, the pirate sword immortal swordsmanship was actually on the same level as the Sky Demon Seductress just now. Honestly speaking, the pirate sword immortal swordsmanship is actually weaker than the Sky Demon Seductress. But the problem is that the sword lady in the hands of the pirate sword immortal is the immortal sword grade 7 warlord sea sword, which is a grade higher than the Sky Demon Seductress, and the combat effectiveness is more than doubled. At the moment of the battle, Gu Xuanyuan was suppressed by the pirate sword immortal. This time, he was really at a disadvantage. And it was not that Gu Xuanyuan deliberately learned the other party's swordsmanship and took the initiative to enter a disadvantage. Damn, this pirate sword immortal swordsmanship is so powerful, it's several times more terrifying than the confusion sword spirit. Gu Xuanyuan thought to himself while resisting the attack of the pirate sword immortal. The pirate sword immortal is famous in the world, but he has never revealed his swordsmanship. It has always been the Sky Demon Seductress or the Seven Warlords Sea Goddess fighting outside, and this old guy hid in the cabin drinking and having fun. So when the pirate sword immortal fought with Gu Xuanyuan as the sword master, not only Gu Xuanyuan was surprised, but even the people of London were surprised. They never knew that their own immortal sword grade swordsman had hidden so deeply. This old man, he deceived me so miserably. It was not only Gu Xuanyuan and the people of London who were surprised. There was a cry of exasperation in the sky, and a golden five-clawed golden dragon fell from the clouds in the deep sky. Judging from the posture of the five-clawed golden dragon, the other party did not seem to fly down smoothly and elegantly, but fell from the sky in a moment of anger. It's the West Sea Dragon King. The West Sea Dragon King came in person. Many people in London recognized this five-clawed golden dragon, who made the West Sea Dragon King AO run so famous in London. Everyone in London basically grew up watching various videos and pictures of the West Sea Dragon King, A.O. Run. This is the biggest shadow in the heart of every person in London. He is the king who rules the entire West Sea, a flood-level Yuan Ko on land, and a half-desolate level Yuan Ko in the sea. If A.O. Run hates the human the most, it must be the pirate sword immortal. This pirate sword immortal boasts of being the king of pirates. He drifts in the sea all year round, and his hands are stained with countless sea race blood. So it is conceivable that this pirate sword immortal and the West Sea Dragon King A.O. Run have a lot of interesting stories. This can be analyzed from the words that the West Sea Dragon King A.O. Run said in exasperation just now. Returning to the topic of this battle, to put it bluntly, when the pirate sword immortal revealed his swordsmanship, the former #1 sword master in the world had already been transferred. The Confusion sword spirit could only helplessly put down this hat that he could not wear for a long time. As for whether this hat would fall on the head of the pirate sword immortal or Gu Xianyuan, it would depend on the result of this battle. Chaos stars. Seeing the appearance of the West Sea Dragon King, a glimmer of light flashed in Gu Xuanyuan's eyes. The Punish immortal sword in his hand fiercely shook out a sword flower, forcing the pirate sword immortal back slightly. At the same time, countless starlights flew out of the Punish immortal sword. It was clearly daytime, but these starlights shone brightly and were much brighter than the starlights in the night. What is this? A light-type skill? Seeing these starlights flying all over the sky, the host in the studio couldn't help but guess. No! The sword spirit of strife shook his head. This is not a light-type skill. This is sword chi. Sword chi? The host's pupils shrank in an instant. This was not because she heard the word sword chi, but because the endless starlights around the pirate sword immortal suddenly seemed to come alive, dancing around the pirate sword immortal. And with the sword chi of Gu Xianyuan, these starlights instantly turned into bullets that shot out one after another, bombarding the body of the pirate sword immortal. In an instant, there were countless waves. The pirate sword immortal's personal shield was shaken by these starlights, leaving behind countless ripples. Other people might not be able to feel it, but the spirit sword level sword bearers all discovered that the pirate sword immortal's personal shield began to decline frantically under the attack of these starlights. In just a dozen seconds, about 10% of the personal shield's energy was destroyed by the starlights. Shichibukai Steel King, the body of the pirate sword immortal, who was crazily attacked by the starlights, flashed a black light, covering the pirate sword immortal's personal shield. The personal shield, which was constantly fluctuating before, instantly became incomparably solid. No matter how those starlights jumped, they could not cause any damage to the pirate sword immortal's personal shield. Seeing the situation, Gu Xianyuan did not waste time. The Punish immortal's sword shook slightly, and these starlights scattered in all directions again, no longer surrounding the pirate sword immortal. Young man, you're quite capable. You actually forced out my Shichibukai Dao. The pirate sword immortal looked at Gu Xianyuan and said in admiration. Chapter 1191. 7 Warlords of the Sea King Wei. Hearing this name, the audience was shocked. It turned out that this was the 7 warlords of the Sea King Wei that the pirate sword immortal relied on to dominate the 4 seas. At the same time, it was also the 7 warlords of the Sea King Wei that almost all the Yuan Ko under the 4 seas were pissing their pants. Seeing the pirate sword immortal use his skills in front of them, the audience's eyes widened. For these audience, this was the first time in their lives that they had seen the real 7 warlords of the Sea King Wei. Legend has it that the 7 warlords of the sea sword was a sword used by the 7 kings of the sea in the world. It had the power of the 7 kings of the sea, and these 7 kings of the sea were Jing Wei, Edward Teach, Zheng He, Shi Xiugu, Columbus, Magellan, and Wilson. Ranked first was the king of the sea, the only human who could make the sea feel fear, because the story of filling up the sea was clear to everyone in China. After the sea drowned Yin Di's daughter Jing Wei, Jing Wei vowed to fill up the sea, so that the sea felt fear and urged the 4 sea dragon kings to write a letter to the Jade Emperor, asking for a ban on Jing Wei filling up the sea. In the end, wherever Jing Wei appeared in the sea, this place would be calm, and the sea would be as flat as the ground. Not even a wave could be set off to express the sea's respect for Jing Wei. The story of the second eternal king of the sea, Zheng He, was clear in everyone's heart. The third reincarnation of the sea, Magellan, was the first king in human history to complete a circumnavigation of the world. The fourth exploration of the sea, Columbus, was the navigator who discovered the American continent. The fifth destruction of the sea, Shi, may be unfamiliar to everyone. She was nicknamed Zheng Yiseo, was originally a prostitute, and was kidnapped to the sea to become a pirate's wife. After her man died, she took over the entire Nanyang Sea. At that time, Nanyang was not yet a colony of Holland, Portugal, England, Spain, and other countries. The entire Nanyang was controlled by Shi. At her peak, she had thousands of warships and more than 50,000 pirates. In terms of the number of pirates, Shi was the #1 pirate in the world. The sixth cruel king of the sea, Edward Teach. This name was still unfamiliar to everyone, but when it came to his nickname, no one would be unfamiliar. This was the world-recognized pirate king, the world's greatest pirate, Blackbeard. The treasure left behind by the pirate Blackbeard was a secret that was sought after by later generations for countless years. It was said that the wealth he plundered was enough to buy the whole of England. The last king of the sea, Nelson, was hailed as the most outstanding admiral in history. He led the British fleet to victory in 3 naval battles that no one thought would be possible. It was also with Nelson's help that England took over control of the sea from Spain, laying the foundation for the powerful empire that never sets. Of course, the readers were more familiar with Nelson. She was the beautiful lady in a red dress and black stockings in a warship. Those who haven't played warships before can ignore this joke. The 7 warlords' sea sword in the hands of the pirate sword, Immortal, inherited the power of these 7 kings of the sea. It could borrow the power that represented their life characteristics to strengthen the wielder's power. For example, the power that the pirate sword Immortal used to block Gu Xianyuan's Chaos Stars came from the power of the 7 warlords, Sea King Rhodes, Steel Sea King Narsen. With the powerful power of the Steel Sea King Rhodes infused into one's personal shield, one could absolutely defend against all attacks that were 10 times stronger than the wielder's own defense. The defense of an Immortal Sword tier sword wielder was terrifying, and the Steel Sea King Rhodes could increase this defense by 10 times. Moreover, it was an absolute defense that could isolate all damage. It was no wonder that Gu Xianyuan's Chaotic Stars was useless in the face of this move. Little girl, give up. The pirate sword Immortal, who had obtained the blessing of the Steel Sea King Rhodes, looked at Gu Xianyuan with a relaxed expression and said, "Unless you ascend to the throne and proclaim yourself an emperor, you will not be able to defeat my Steel Sea King Rhodes before my sword essence is exhausted." The pirate sword Immortal was speaking the truth. No matter how exquisite Gu Xianyuan's attack was, it would be useless against an opponent with absolute defense. As the oldest immortal sword wielder, the pirate sword Immortal was also a sword wielder who sailed and trained day and night in the sea. It was said that the sword essence in his body had surpassed the standard of 10 million quarks of sword essence for an emperor sword wielder, reaching more than 13 million quarks. With such dense sword essence, even using the Steel Sea King Rhodes for a few hours would be a piece of cake. Senior, you're a bit too confident. How would you know if you don't try? Gu Xianyuan leapt backwards, breaking away from the direct disengagement with the pirate sword Immortal. At the same time, the execution Immortal sword in his hand began to quickly dance in the air. The execution Immortal sword was like an exquisite paintbrush, casting a spell in the air out of thin air. Wherever the blade of the sword passed, a golden line would be left behind, as if it was really drawing something in the air. This little girl, the pirate sword Immortal, who had received the buff from the Steel Sea King Rhodes, saw this scene and felt his heart tighten. However, he could feel that this little girl was using a skill that was extremely dangerous to him. If he allowed her to use this skill, even with the protection of the Steel Sea King Road, he might still face great danger. Little girl, I, the old pirate, am not someone who fishes for fame. Eat my sword. Although his level was higher than Gu Xianyuan's by a level, the pirate sword immortal did not plan to show the demeanor of a senior. He allowed Gu Xianyuan to use the next skill. Instead, the moment Gu Xianyuan used her skill, he stuck close to Gu Xianyuan's side like a ghost, trying to use his skill on her. This was an excellent opportunity because the sword of eradication in Gu Xianyuan's hand was drawing wildly in the air, preparing for the next skill with all her might. At this time, Gu Xianyuan no longer had a weapon to deal with the pirate sword immortal's attack. Apart from dodging and resisting, Gu Xianyuan didn't seem to have any other way to deal with it. But if Gu Xianyuan dodged, then the skill she was preparing would inevitably be interrupted. 9 Swords of Mysterious Heaven, Sword of the Spring. What the pirate sword immortal never expected was that Gu Xianyuan would block his attack in a way he never thought of. Gu Xianyuan's right index and middle finger stretched forward, and an umbrella-like barrier made of sword chi blocked in front of the pirate sword immortal. No matter how the pirate sword immortal attacked, he was unable to break through the defense of this barrier in a short period of time. Body as sword. Seeing the sword chi blossoming from Gu Xianyuan's fingers, the pirate sword immortal murmured. He never thought he would actually see this legendary scene. Body as sword was an ability that only existed in legends. It allowed the wielder to abandon his own sword lady and use his own body as a substitute for the sword lady to release the power that only the sword lady could use. This meant that the wielder had already broken away from the restrictions of the sword lady to a certain extent and could rely on his own physical strength to fight against Yuan Ko. This already went against the education that all the wielder and humans in this world had received for the past 1,000 years. This was because no matter which base city's teaching materials, they all told humans this. Humans can only rely on the power of the sword lady to fight against Yuan Ko. Without the sword lady, the wielder can only be an ordinary person. But among the true top wielder, there had always been such a legend. It was said that only the 2 most powerful wielder in the world, Kanzu and Jitianjindi, could use their own bodies as a medium to fight against Yuan Ko without a sword lady. Moreover, they could even slay the powerful flood-level Yuan Ko with their swords. They were so powerful that they had already surpassed the imagination of modern humans. However, these 2 wielder also told their descendants that using their own bodies to fight was only a last resort. The combat power of their own bodies was not as good as that of an ancient sword lady, so when they had a sword lady in hand, it was still better to use the sword lady to fight. The pirate sword immortal had originally thought that these things only existed in legends, but he never thought that he would actually see such a shocking scene in front of this little girl who was not even 19 years old. How did this little girl practice such terrifying swordsmanship? Were the youngsters nowadays already this terrifying? Chaos Golden Lotus. While the pirate sword immortal was in a daze, Gu Xianyuan had already finished casting her skill. A golden lotus floated in the air, flashing with a mysterious golden light. It gradually approached the pirate sword immortal. Retreat. The pirate sword immortal's heart surged with an endless sense of danger. Without another word, he began to retreat frantically in an attempt to avoid the lotus. However, this battlefield was only a square platform that was 500 square meters wide. The pirate sword immortal could only escape 500 meters at most. So where could he escape to? The pirate sword immortal wanted to rely on his own speed to surpass the golden lotus, but the golden lotus continued to follow the pirate sword immortal's side. No matter how the pirate sword immortal increased his speed, the golden lotus was always getting closer and closer to the pirate sword immortal. In the end, it inevitably hit the pirate sword immortal. Unexpectedly, the scene of the collision was very calm. There was no explosion, no smoke, and no tremors. It was as natural and calm as a petal falling on one's shoulder. But in the next second, the pirate sword immortal suddenly spat out a mouthful of blood and some bloody chunks of flesh. At the same time, cracks suddenly appeared on the pirate sword immortal's protective shield, which was under the protection of steel strength. It was like a piece of glass that could shatter at any time. What's going on? What the hell is going on? Seeing this scene, all the audience screamed involuntarily. Their pirate sword immortal had clearly used the power of the steel Neptune and could absolutely defend against an attack that was 10 times stronger. How could the pirate sword immortal suffer such serious damage in an instant? Chapter 1192. My Ancestral Dragon. In the distant sky, the West Sea Dragon King Ao Run, who had been quietly watching the battle, began to twitch like a cat with its fur standing on end. Those who were familiar with the West Sea Dragon King Ao Run knew that when the West Sea Dragon King was in such a situation, it meant that the West Sea Dragon King felt fear. Furthermore, it was a certain degree of fear. Otherwise, the West Sea Dragon King would definitely not do such an embarrassing thing. Ao Run, that little loach, is also afraid. On a hill near London, Guan Yu, who was riding a tall red horse, wearing a green battle robe and holding a green dragon crescent blade, muttered to himself after seeing Ao Run's strange movements. Just like the West Sea Dragon King Ao Run, the great martial saint Guan Yu also felt fear. No, in Guan Yu's words, it was a strong desire to fight. It was an instinctive reaction to a strong person, just like when he first met Lu Bu outside Hulao Pass. What move is this? Why can it ignore my Steel Sea King power? The pirate sword immortal stood up from the ground. Although he looked very normal, his complexion was obviously much worse than before. It was obvious that the pirate sword immortal was heavily injured. This move is called Chaotic Golden Lotus. Gu Xianyuan didn't hide it and said it directly. That's right, this was the third move of the Chaos Sword Art that Gu Xianyuan learned after fighting Nazi Hitler in the game world for a few months. Chaotic Golden Lotus. The Chaotic Golden Lotus had a strong ability to ignore defense. No matter how strong the defense was, it was useless in front of the Chaotic Golden Lotus. This was also the reason why the Pirate Sword Immortal's 7 warlords of the Sea King Road was defeated. No matter how strong his defense was, it was useless in front of an attack that ignored defense. But it must be pointed out that Gu Xianyuan had used the Chaotic Golden Lotus many times before. Those Chaotic Golden Lotuses didn't need any preparation or guidance. Gu Xianyuan could use them at any time. But this time, Gu Xianyuan had no choice but to reveal her ability to transform into a sword. Only after delaying the preparation time for more than 5 seconds did she use the Chaotic Golden Lotus. From this, it could be seen that the Chaotic Golden Lotus this time was somewhat different from the ones he had used before. Perhaps he could use the term True Chaotic Golden Lotus to distinguish this Chaotic Golden Lotus from the others. This meant that ordinary Golden Lotuses of Primal Chaos would not be able to break through the Pirate Sword Immortal's Steel Sea King power. Gu Xianyuan would have to spend a lot of effort and time to accumulate her own strength to break through the Pirate Sword Immortal's defense. From this, it could be seen that the Pirate Sword Immortal's Steel Sea King power was indeed extraordinary. All right. The Pirate Sword Immortal shouted, "Little girl, since you made this old man eat a lotus flower, then this old man will return the favor with a bowl of Laki Kanji. Listen, this old man will only use one move. If you can withstand this move of this old man while defending with all your strength, this old man will admit defeat and admit that you have the qualifications to challenge His Majesty Longshore. If you can't withstand this move, then it doesn't matter. You just have to protect your head with all your strength. This old man has an immortal sword-grade medical pod. As long as your head is still there, you won't die, haha." The Pirate Sword Immortal's words made all the audience feel a chill. The meaning of this sentence was already very clear. This was an extremely terrifying killing move, so terrifying that it could completely destroy Gu Xianyuan's body. At most, it could save Gu Xianyuan's head. After all, with the current medical technology, as long as the head was still there, it could be reborn, just like how Gahan had reborn when Maiden 3 years ago. Since Senior has chosen to attack, then how can this Junior defend? Why don't this Junior also use a move? If Senior can't withstand it, this Junior also has an immortal sword grade medical pod in his dimensional pocket. Gu Xianyuan's words actually meant that she wanted to give up defense and choose to fight head-on with the pirate sword immortal. Good fella, you have guts. Then don't blame this old man for bullying you. Shichibukai, cruel king. The Shichibukai in the pirate sword immortal's hand was instantly raised above his head, and a blood-red light instantly enveloped the entire Shichibukai. Thinking of the scene of the pirate sword immortal using Shichibukai Steel King just now, it was not difficult to guess that at this time, the pirate sword immortal had already blessed himself with the second kind of king's power in Shichibukai. Shichibukai, king of destruction. The power of the cruel king was just the beginning. Then the gray light enveloped the pirate sword immortal's head, and he also blessed the third Shichibukai. Shichibukai, king of exploration. The green light enveloped the legs of the pirate sword immortal. Shichibukai, king of samsara. A purple light appeared in the pupils of the pirate sword immortal, giving the pirate sword immortal a pair of purple eyes. Shichibukai, our eternal king. The blue light covered the skin of the pirate sword immortal, and the pirate sword immortal instantly turned into a person as if he had become an avatar. Shichibukai, endless king. The yellow light was finally engraved on the Shichibukai in the hands of the pirate sword immortal, making the Shichibukai glitter with golden light, as if it was made of pure gold. What the hell is going on? Why did our pirate sword immortal become a rainbow man? At this time, the pirate sword immortal's body was filled with black, red, gray, green, purple, blue, yellow, 7 colors, just like a rainbow man. It's no wonder that the people of London would ridicule their pirate sword immortal. My ancestral dragon, this crazy pirate, he actually blessed himself with the power of Shichibukai Dao at the same time. This madman, he is courting death. There is no way he can play like this in the world. The Dragon King of the West Sea, A.O. Run's body once again exploded, and the situation was more serious than the last time. Obviously, the power of Shichibukai Dao also made A.O. Run, a flood-level Yuan Ko, feel even more terrifying fear. I want to fight with him, even if I will be injured. Warrior Sage Guan Yu tightly grasped the green dragon crescent blade in his hand, the blood in his body burning up, and he could not wait to rush down and fight with the pirate sword immortal. But in the end, Guan Yu still suppressed this impulse, because he found that if he fought with the pirate sword immortal in this state, he was afraid that he would suffer great damage that he could not bear. This woman has no chance. Guan Yu glanced at Gu Xianyuan and made such a judgment. Lord Sword Spirit of Strife, what the hell is going on? Why did the pirate sword immortal become a rainbow, become like this? In the studio, the host who originally wanted to say that the rainbow man suddenly covered his mouth and asked in a different way. The Sword Spirit of Strife hesitated for a moment, but still explained, "It is obvious that the pirate sword immortal has completely blessed himself with the power of Shichibukai Dao, so there are 7 colors of light. Then what are the 7 powers of Shichibukai Dao? What is the effect?" The host asked. Everyone has seen the black power of Steel King Dao just now. It has the absolute defense power of 10 times the defense. The gray power of Destruction King Dao has the attack power of 10 times the attack power. The green power of Exploration King Dao is the power of inevitable hit that is nowhere to hide. The purple power of Reincarnation King Dao is the power of rebirth from the dead. The blue power of Eternal King Dao is the power of all kinds of restraints and disturbances. The yellow power of Incessant King Dao is the power of continuous damage. The Sword Spirit of Strife finished listing the 7 powers of Shichibukai Dao in one breath, completely shocking the host in the studio and the audience in front of the television. Just by listening to it, one could tell how terrifying the 7 powers were. And now that all 7 powers were blessed on a single person, how terrifying would that person be? It was like a peerless sword mistress in League of Legends. With a max level of 18 and 6 godly equipment, she gained 10 times the double resistance, 10 times the attack power, 100% hit rate, 100% resurrection buff, immunity to control effects, and 100% continuous damage. Which hero would be able to defeat a sword mistress like that? It was no wonder that the West Sea Dragon King Ao, Run, and Warrior Sangguan Yu felt great fear. Although they were a realm above the Pirate Sword Immortal, they had lost the confidence to fight against the Pirate Sword Immortal who had received such a blessing. 3 green lotus swords, green lotus, white lotus body. On the other side, Gu Xianyuan had also begun preparing for her ultimate move. First, she used the green lotus white lotus body that she had not used for a long time to increase her body control and reaction speed by 100 times. However, this was only the beginning. The next move was the real ultimate move that Gu Xianyuan planned to use. She placed the tip of the immortal slaying sword between her eyebrows. The blade of the sword moved slightly, and a drop of blood seeped out from between her eyebrows. This drop of blood quickly seeped into the blade of the immortal slaying sword. The blood in between the eyebrows was different from the other blood in the body. The other blood only contained a part of the person's power, but the drop of blood in between the eyebrows contained the soul and consciousness of the sword wielder. When the drop of blood in between the eyebrows merged with the immortal slaying sword, it also meant that Gu Xuanyuan's entire soul and consciousness had also merged with the immortal slaying sword. When the drop of blood merged with the immortal slaying sword, the two sword wielder turned around at the same time and looked at each other face to face. At this time, the audience suddenly discovered that the two sword wielder had completed the preparation for their final move and were about to carry out the final blow of today's confrontation. Was the pirate sword immortal, who had gathered the power of Shichibukai Dao, or was it Gu Xianyuan, who seemed to have no changes, who was better? However, from the looks of it, the pirate sword immortal, whose body was colorful like a rainbow person, was obviously much more dazzling than Gu Xianyuan, whose body did not change and looked the same as before. Come on, come on. At this moment, the surrounding audience suddenly began to shout and cheer in unison. But compared with the previous cheers, the cheers this time were not divided into factions. The audience in London was no longer only cheering for their own sword wielder. Their cheers were also for their enemy, Gu Xianyuan. This was the respect that Gu Xianyuan had won with her own strength. Chapter 1193. In the imagination of the audience, the last collision between the pirate sword immortal and Gu Xianyuan should be earth-shattering, a battle that would turn the entire world upside down. But when the two of them really collided, the scene was unexpectedly calm. It was like two actors holding two wooden swords colliding with each other. Other than that, there was no other movement. What's going on? Why is there no movement? Seeing this scene, not only were the audience at the scene and in front of the TV confused, but even the West Sea Dragon King Ao Run and Guan Yu who were watching from the side were puzzled. However, unlike the audience who were completely at a loss, although the two flood-level Yuan Ko didn't see the door, they felt a power that made them tremble from the bottom of their hearts, burst out in an instant, and then disappeared without a trace. What was the move you used just now? After a long silence, the pirate sword immortal turned around, frowned, and asked with a slightly trembling voice. Replying to Senior's question, this junior didn't use one move just now, but 3. Having said that, Gu Xianyuan suddenly pressed her chest, then her face, her arms, her thighs. In short, all the parts of her body that were exposed outside of her clothes all cracked open with bloody wounds. And the places that were covered by her clothes also instantly turned bright red. Then, the clothes that Gu Xianyuan wore were already soaked in blood, and Gu Xuanyuan's body was already close to a state of collapse. But it was also in such a state that Gu Xianyuan still stood, letting the bright red blood flow out of her body, dyeing the platform under her feet red. Injured. Miss Gu Shirhan is injured. Seeing this scene, some of the audience shouted excitedly. This was really not easy. This challenge had been going on for 5 days, and this was the first time they saw Gu Xianyuan bleed, and the first time they saw Gu Xianyuan get injured. 1. The pirate's sword immortal won. We won. Another part of the audience shouted in joy. Gu Xuanyuan's injuries were so serious that there were wounds all over her body. However, the pirate's sword immortal looked the same as before the battle. Other than his pale face, there was nothing different. Clearly, the victory of the battle belonged to the pirate's sword immortal. Enough, you spineless fellows, stop talking. These two are heroes. Shut your mouths. Facing the cheers of the audience, most of the audience around them unexpectedly took the initiative to stop these guys. The reason why they would defend Gu Xianyuan was because the strength that Gu Xianyuan had displayed was genuine and powerful. These Londoners felt that even if they were to lose to Gu Xianyuan, it would not be too shameful of a matter. The second reason was because Gu Xianyuan's opponent was the pirate sword immortal, a veteran expert among the immortal sword tier sword wielders. He was one of the top 5 immortal sword tier sword wielders. For such an expert to defeat Gu Xianyuan, a spirit sword level sword wielder, there was really nothing to brag about. What's more, Gu Xianyuan also forced the pirate sword immortal's biggest trick, forcing the pirate sword immortal to gather all the power of the 7 warlords of the Sea King's way on himself to achieve the final victory, which was not much different from losing. So there are 3 moves. Hearing Gu Xuanyuan's words, the pirate sword immortal nodded slightly, cupped his hands, and said, I wonder if you could tell me which 3 moves it is. This junior dares not answer. Gu Xianyuan coughed out blood as she spoke. These 3 moves are Green Lotus White Root Body, Legend of Primal Chaos, and Primal Chaos Return. These 3 moves, Green Lotus White Root Body, Legend of Primal Chaos, Primal Chaos Return. The pirate sword immortal repeated these names over and over in his mind. After a while, he forced a smile and asked Gu Xianyuan, Please forgive this old man's poor eyesight. This old man knows all the sword arts in this world like the back of his hand, but these 3 moves have never been heard of before. I wonder which sword art these 3 moves come from, and who created them. This Green Lotus White Root Body is one of the 3 Green Lotus swords passed down by my Gu family's ancestor. As for who the creator is, this humble one really does not know. Gu Xianyuan hesitated for a while, then actually told the pirate sword immortal the origins of these sword arts. As for Legend of Primal Chaos and Primal Chaos Return, they are 2 moves from the sword art of Primal Chaos. As for the creator of the sword art of Primal Chaos, it is not some ancient person, but my little brother Gahan. What? You're saying that the last 2 moves that you used to defeat me were created by your little brother Gahan? Hearing Gu Xuanyuan's words, the pirate sword immortal could no longer maintain his calm expression. His whole body went limp, and he collapsed to the ground, muttering in disbelief, Heavens! How is this possible? Such a powerful sword art was created by a 20-something-year-old youth? I've lived half my life like a dog. No, it's not just me. I'm afraid even Kinzu and Jatian Jindi have lived like dogs compared to your little brother. It was no wonder that the pirate sword immortal would lose his composure like this. Who could have imagined that such a powerful and terrifying sword art, which could even be called the number 1 sword art in the world, was actually created by a 20-something-year-old youth? This tore apart the pirate sword immortal's worldview, as well as the worldview of all the sword wielders present who knew what this meant. The future of this world depends on you. The pirate sword immortal fiercely stretched out a hand, and after saying these words that were like his last words, his arm went limp, and his whole body directly fainted on the platform. Senior pirate! Senior pirate! When Gu Xianyuan saw this scene, she immediately dragged her bloodied body and rushed to the side of the pirate sword immortal. She quickly took out the immortal sword grade medical pod from her dimensional pocket and carefully placed the pirate sword immortal into the medical pod. What happened? Oh my God! The pirate sword immortal. The entire audience seemed to have lit up with explosives, and the entire place exploded. Everyone's heart surged with an ominous premonition. Could it be that the pirate sword immortal had died in this battle? Had he died at the hands of Gu Xianyuan? At this time, the staff around the platform finally gathered around and examined the medical pod. Then, Harry Chong Rua's anxious expression relaxed, and he explained to the audience, the pirate sword immortal fainted because all the sword elements in his body had been used up. The pirate sword immortal's body is actually not that big of a problem. After recuperating in the medical pod for a few weeks, he will completely recover. There is no need to worry about the pirate sword immortal's safety. Phew! After hearing Harry Chong Rua's explanation, all the people in London heaved a long sigh of relief. It was good that the pirate sword immortal was fine. Just now, they had almost thought that the pirate sword immortal was dead. However, after this moment of relief, the mood of the audience immediately became extremely bad. From the appearance of the two people, the bloodied and injured Gu Xianyuan was obviously not as good as the pirate sword immortal, who was in good health. However, at this time, Gu Xianyuan, who was covered in blood, was busy treating the pirate sword immortal, while the pirate sword immortal was directly lying in the medical pod in a coma. Was there even need to say who won or lost? Obviously, Gu Xianyuan had won in the end. The dignified pirate sword immortal had been defeated by Gu Xianyuan. The people in London were completely silent. They did not know what to say. Even such a powerful pirate sword immortal had been defeated by Gu Xianyuan. At this moment, other than Long Shijindi, there was no one else in London who could defeat Gu Xianyuan. Ancestral dragon. That old bastard pirate. What's even more ridiculous is that this king actually did not see how he was defeated. In the sky, West Sea Dragon King Ao Run lowered his head and said to himself. At this moment, his mind was still recalling the battle just now. He wanted to figure out where Gu Xianyuan had won and where the pirate sword immortal had lost. However, no matter how West Sea Dragon King Ao Run recalled, he could not figure out what was hidden in it. This could only mean one thing. The swordsmanship of Gu Xianyuan and the pirate sword immortal had exceeded Ao Run's understanding. Perhaps in terms of pure strength, Ao Run was still a step ahead, but in terms of skill, Ao Run was completely inferior to these two guys. This is not fun anymore. It seems that this king has to reevaluate humans. At the very least, I have to reevaluate this woman named Gu Shirhan. Ao Run looked deeply at Gu Xianyuan on the platform, and the dragon whiskers on the corner of his mouth suddenly curled up. It's rare for this little bastard 28 to do such a good thing. It seems that this king has to agree to his request. I really want to fight with her, but how can I bully a woman? On the other side, Second Master Guan Yu tugged at his beard and said, everyone knows that our Second Master Guan Yu is a martial sage, the idol of all martial artists in the world. How can such a man fight with a woman? The people of London watched as the staff carried the medical cabin containing the pirate sword immortal down, and then looked at Gu Xianyuan, who was still bleeding on the platform, with a complicated expression. At this time, the 5-day challenge was completely over. If they wanted to see the next battle, it was estimated that it would be the battle between Gu Xianyuan and Long Shijindi. At that time, would the winner really be Long Shijindi? Once upon a time, the people of London didn't even have 0.001% confidence. They didn't believe that Long Shijindi could be defeated by a spirit sword level swordsman. But with the fall of the pirate sword immortal, the people of London suddenly felt that there was at least a 30% chance that Long Shijindi would win. Thinking of this, the people of London felt a great sadness in their hearts. Even if Long Shijindi won in the end, London would be completely destroyed, and all the people of London would never be able to raise their heads in front of the people of Yuzhong for the rest of their lives. Disperse, disperse, go home and sleep. As the heartbroken Londoners were preparing to leave this sorrowful place, thunder suddenly roared in the sky. A virtual, hazy figure that appeared to be formed from lightning suddenly appeared in the sky above the platform. The figure looked down at Gu Xianyuan, who was on the platform. Gu Shirhan, we have underestimated you. All the people of London who were ready to leave suddenly stood motionless. They never thought that at the last moment of today, Long Shijindi, who had not shown up, would suddenly appear in this way. Chapter 1194. Junior, Gu Shirhan pays respect to your majesty Long Shi Jindi. Seeing Long Shi Jindi's humanoid figure in the sky, Gu Xianyuan immediately bent down and saluted Long Shi Jindi. Although they were about to become opponents, no matter who won or lost, before Gu Xianyuan ascended to the throne, Gu Xianyuan would always maintain her etiquette to Long Shi Jindi. Very good. You have once again surprised me. Very good. Long Shi Jindi said very good twice in a row. From this, it could be seen that Long Shi Jindi himself was also shocked by Gu Xuanyuan's performance. Thank you, Your Majesty, for your praise, Gu Xianyuan said with a calm face. This battlefield is good. Long Shi Jindi's humanoid figure made of lightning looked at the boundless sea, and then, without lowering his head, said to Gu Xianyuan, "How about you and I use this sea as the battlefield? This sea with a circumference of 300 miles will be our battlefield. As your majesty commands." Gu Xianyuan cupped her hands in obeisance, without any objection. It seems that this duel is inevitable. Your majesty has begun to discuss the battlefield. Hearing that Long Shi Jindi and Gu Xianyuan were going to be opponents, the hearts of the audience could not help but raise a sense of sadness. They had gathered the strength of all the powerhouses in the city of London and fought for 5 days in order to stop this battle. But this battle was inevitable in the end. How sad and King sad was this? You are a spirit sword level swordsman, so you don't have the ability to travel through the void. I also disdain to fight you with the power of the void, lest you feel that I have an unfair advantage. Long Shi Jindi lightly said, "How about this? I will set up a void stop array here in advance tonight, so that no one can travel through the void in this array. We can have a fair fight, and I will not take advantage of you." "Thank you, Your Majesty." This time, Gu Xianyuan willingly saluted Long Shi Jindi. In the battle with Long Shi Jindi, if one were to ask what Gu Xianyuan was most afraid of, it would undoubtedly be the fear that Long Shi Jindi would travel through the void and launch an attack on her through the void. If such an attack was unleashed by an immortal sword rank sword wielder, Gu Xianyuan might still be able to barely parry it. However, if it was used by an emperor sword rank sword wielder, then Gu Xianyuan would really be in a difficult situation. This time, Long Shi Jindi had taken the initiative to suggest sealing the void, which could be considered to have solved a big problem for Gu Xianyuan. From this, it could also be seen that although Long Shi Jindi was very unreasonable in doing certain things, he had not lost the self-esteem of an emperor sword wielder. Right, there's one more thing. Long Shi Jindi suddenly lowered his head and glanced at the execution immortal sword in Gu Xuanyuan's hand. The lightning humanoid figure was in a trance for a moment. The chaos sword technique you just mentioned, was it really created by your younger brother Gahan alone? Did he really create this all on his own? Hearing this question from Long Shi Jindi, Gu Xianyuan suddenly realized that this was probably the real reason why Long Shi Jindi had suddenly appeared. It was her chaos sword technique that had forced Long Shi Jindi to appear. Such a terrifying sword technique, even an emperor sword rank sword wielder like Long Shi Jindi had to ask about it clearly. Yes and no. Gu Xianyuan did not hesitate. In fact, when she had taken the initiative to spit out the name Chaos Sword Technique, Gu Xianyuan had already thought about it. Gahan could not continue to show weakness like this. Gahan's strength had already reached the point where he was not afraid of anyone other than an Emperor Sword rank sword wielder. Now was the time to let the name of Gahan resound throughout the world, to prepare to establish his own force, to pave the way for the future ascension to the throne, and to lead the entire human society. Therefore, in the battle with the pirate sword immortal, Gu Xianyuan had unreservedly displayed her strength, and at the same time, took the initiative to make her real identity, Gahan, famous. The identity of the creator of Chaos Sword Technique was only the first step, and the following answer was the second step. Yes and no, Gu Xianyuan said proudly. The first 4 moves of this Chaos Sword Technique were created by my younger brother alone, but the last two moves were created by my younger brother and Kinzu. My younger brother originally wanted to be Kinzu's disciple, but Kinzu said that he was not qualified to be my younger brother's disciple. Therefore, my younger brother called Kinzu master, but Kinzu called my younger brother junior brother. What? Kinzu, master, junior brother. Gu Xuanyuan's words were like a huge grenade, exploding in everyone's mind. Not only did the ordinary people react this way, even Longsher Jindi's lightning figure in the sky shook violently, like a light bulb with an unstable voltage. The old dragon in the sky directly fell down, splashing into the sea, and the scarlet hare horse under Marshal St. Guan Yu's crotch neighed wildly, and Guan Yu's face completely turned from red to black, looking as ugly as Liu Bei's death. Little girl, don't talk nonsense. Kinzu has already disappeared for 1,000 years. So how did your younger brother study sword techniques together with Kinzu? Longsher Jindi asked in disbelief. Although Kinzu has already disappeared, Kinzu's sword mark soul mark has not disappeared. Your Majesty Longsher, you can write a letter to the Lun Yin family to ask about it. I believe that the Lun Yin family will not hide it from your Majesty Longsher. Gu Xianyuan said loudly. Very good. I'll look forward to a fight with you. After Longsher Jindi finished speaking, the lightning figure in the sky disappeared completely. It seemed that he needed to digest the news he got today. After looking around with interest, Gu Xianyuan directly got into her maglev flying car and disappeared from the city of London. The whole platform regained its calmness, as if the battle just now had never happened. But the calmness of the platform caused the whole network to explode, and a shocking title instantly blew up the whole network. After 1,000 years, Kinzu reappears, calls the wanted man brother, and claims that his strength is not as good as modern people. It was precisely because of this shocking title that the news spread crazily throughout the network. In just one night, everyone on the internet already knew about it. Today, a great expert was suddenly born in the world. This expert was so powerful that even the sword master, who was known as the strongest in human history, had to address him as a senior and junior brother. And the news that the three siblings of the family were all incomparable experts. Soon, a lot of online comments also appeared on the major forums. The owners of these comments were some very well-known combat analysts who liked to analyze the battles of the sword bearers and the strength ranking of the sword bearers. And after these combat analysts watched the video of Gu Xianyuan and the pirate sword immortal, even the most mean combat analysts had to admit that this spirit sword level sword bearer named Gu Shirhan had defeated the pirate sword immortal with real strength. Gu Shirhan was already the undisputed number 1 spirit sword level sword bearer in the world. Of course, perhaps the number 1 spirit sword level sword bearer in the world should be Gu Shirhan's younger brother, Gahan. It was just that since Gahan was wanted, he had never appeared in front of the world again. Gahan's real combat strength was still an unsolved mystery. However, since this Gu Shirhan said that the chaos sword technique was created by Gahan, then, as the creator, Gahan's swordsmanship must be higher than Gu Shirhan's. Then, from this point of analysis, perhaps Gahan was the real number 1 spirit sword level sword bearer. And more combat analysts said with certainty that this time, humans might give birth to a new legend. Kinzu, who was regarded as a god by humans and thought that they could never surpass him in this lifetime, was very likely to fall from this altar, as long as Gahan could successfully synchronize and harmonize the Emperor Sword level sword bearer and become an Emperor Sword level sword bearer. One must know that the industry of combat analysts had always been about to shock people to death. Only by writing more shocking, more exaggerated, and more dramatic content could the readers have greater interest in reading. So later, some combat analysts even said with certainty that if Gahan could ascend to the throne and become the emperor, the day when humans would eliminate all the Yuan Ko's and re-rule the entire earth would come. After a night of preparation, when the sun rose the next day, all the cities, including Lingqing, turned their attention to the battle in London. Other than Yuzhong City's official TV station, which was specially designated, The media from the other 6 base cities waved the banknotes in their hands and crazily flattered the Chong-Ruo family, asking for the broadcasting rights of this battle. In the end, just by selling the broadcasting rights, the Chong-Ruo family earned a total of 170 million renminbi. This was 1,700 times the cost of building the offshore platform, which made Harry Chong-Ruo smile so widely that he couldn't close his mouth. According to incomplete statistics, among the nearly 500 million people in the 8 base cities, about 200 million people paid attention to the live broadcast of this battle, and another 300 million people watched the recorded broadcast of this battle. The viewing rate could be said to be 100%, and it wasn't only humans who were looking forward to this battle. Before the battle even started, 4 5-clawed golden dragons appeared in the sky at the same time, and in the end, they turned into 4 kings wearing dragon robes. Oh my God, the dragon kings of the 4 seas, they're all here. Seeing the appearance of these 4 5-clawed golden dragons, every audience present opened their mouths wide, unable to close them. The dragon kings of the 4 seas appearing at the same place at the same time was something that had never happened in hundreds of years. The last time the dragon kings of the 4 seas appeared at the same time was during King Arthur's betrayal. At that time, the dragon kings of the 4 seas acted at the same time to stop King Jindi, which allowed the martyr's palace to catch a breath and not let all of its strongholds in the human world be destroyed in the hands of humans. And this time, why did the dragon kings of the 4 seas appear at the same time? Could it be that they were planning to attack London? Everyone's hearts were in their throats, but they soon calmed down because the dragon kings of the 4 seas spoke in the direction of the palace in the city in unison. The dragon kings of the 4 seas have come to watch the battle. I wonder if His Majesty Longshore welcomes them? It turned out that the dragon kings of the 4 seas had come to watch the battle. But this wasn't strange. This battle could be said to be unprecedented in human history. The dragon kings of the 4 seas were eager to know what the upper limit of Gu Xianyuan's strength was. It was only natural that they would decide their attitude towards her in the future. Since you're here, take things as they come. Since the dragon kings of the 4 seas have come, there's no reason for this junior to not welcome you. Take your seats. As soon as Longshore Jindi's voice fell, 4 golden dragon thrones suddenly appeared in the sky out of nowhere. The dragon kings of the 4 seas looked at each other and smiled, then sat down on the dragon thrones. The shock brought by the dragon kings of the 4 seas had yet to end. On the other side, 3 men riding on fine horses arrived at lightning speed. Tesla, Guan Yu, and Temujin have come to watch the battle. I wonder if His Majesty Longshore welcomes them? The 3 Yuan Kos had actually come to watch the battle, just like the dragon kings of the 4 seas. Why are they here? Yeah, why do they have the guts to come? I think it's too dangerous here. Why don't we hide inside the city and watch the live broadcast? Seeing the appearance of the 3 flood-level Yuan Kos of the Martyr's Palace, the audience in the venue couldn't help but want to run back into the superdimensional barrier. These 3 Yuan Kos were not like the dragon kings of the 4 seas. Although they had some friction with humans, they always maintained a neutral and harmonious state. These 3 Yuan Kos were people who were numb to killing. No less than 1 million humans had died in the hands of these 3 Yuan Kos. With the 3 of them appearing at the same time, there was no guarantee that another massacre was about to take place. Since you've come, you are guests. If the 3 of you can abide by your duties, even if I don't welcome you, I can only ask the 3 of you to sit down. After Longshore Jinni finished speaking, another 3 golden dragon thrones appeared. Tesla, Guan Yu, and Temujin also sat down without hesitation. At this moment, on this battlefield, 7 flood-level Yuan Kos had instantly gathered. Together with Longshore Jindi's who was about to appear, there was a total of 8 Emperor sword-level sword-bearers. This scene made everyone who was watching the live broadcast feel their blood boiling. They were even more crazily looking forward to the battle that was about to begin. They were looking forward to the unprecedented battle between Gu Xianyuan and Longshore Jindi. You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.